हम गए थे, थोड़ा ही सामान इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं, वही हवन कुंड शुंड कल के लिए ना, सामान इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं, सुबह से लगे। नहीं ये देखना, इसको करके ना फिर आवाज आएगी तो बंद कर दे। हम गए थे, थोड़ा ही सामान इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं, वही हवन कुंड शुंड कल के लिए ना, सामान इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं।
Excuse me, please mute yourself.
नहीं ये देखना,
हेलो,
इसको करके ना, हेलो आवाज आएगी तो बंद कर दे। हम गए थे, थोड़ा ही सामान इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं, वही हवन कुंड शुंड कल के लिए ना, सामान इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं।
Excuse me, please mute yourself.
नहीं ये देखना,
हेलो,
इसको करके ना, हेलो आवाज आएगी तो बंद कर दे।
and lambda. We are catering PV services for more than 30 clients in the help of PVH. In the current scenario, automation is one of the essential requirements of the pharmacovigilance, and we have also adopted PVH artificial intelligence enable automation solution and our team to enhance their productivity. It delivers touchless processing to generate application and performance of and we found PVH web solution. With PVH, we are able to update Pharmacogenesis or artificial intelligence to improve data quality, insight across functions. In the recent time, our team's productivity has increased significantly with the help of Code is a triage search system which help to manage cases received from Vigilance, MHRA, and Carla.
I am beginning to graduate pharmacist opportunity experience in starting my current position as a capability and head of HCU. Given time, I'm glad to found PVH, which is cloud-based, figure safety, surveillance, PVH team, and accessibility and extended. We are good to respond, willing to hear our problems and needs of the software. Overall compliance of the system is easy to be demonstrated to our partners and authorities in case of audit satisfactions. As PVH platform has a very I think this is a good thing.
Everyone, this is Dr. Deepa Arora. I am the founder director of Clinical License.
Clinical is a full service CRO managed by professionals with extensive experience in pharma companies in leadership positions. Due to this unique experience, we have the expertise to understand end-to-end PV operations and accordingly support our pharma biotech clients. We are ISO certified for quality management services and information security management services. We are providing end-to-end pharmacovigilance operations for our Indian, US, and EU clients, including case processing, literature monitoring, preparation of aggregate reports, papers, DSURs, and PADers, signal management, risk management plans, audit and inspection support, inspection readiness, and EU QPPV and local safety officer services. Through our technology partners, we also provide safety database, signal detection modules, and automation solutions for PV. We are working with 20 plus clients across the globe in the US, Europe, and Asia. This map shows the locations of our current clients, and our team includes qualified staff, professionals, physicians, and pharmacists. It's our experienced team members with experience in pharma industry, and average experience of our technical leaders is 15 plus years. We have a strong understanding of regulations and expectations of competent authorities from pharmacovigilance function. And our team also has a strong experience of project management. We provide EU QPPV and local safety officer services through our partners. Ms. Roshu Garcia is the QPPV. She is the director of Leon Research based in Spain. She has extensive experience in pharma and medical device industry.
My experience cover both clinical and
you are enjoying the sessions. I would like to congratulate the organizers for the wonderful agenda and eminent speakers. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we'll start the next session. I'm just waiting for our moderators to join. So just a minute. Let's see there. So welcome you once again. For our next session, the second session, we will have 4 speakers and thereafter one panel discussion. And Dr. Jyoti Upadhyay is going to moderate the session, and Dr. Medhajoshi ma'am, she will chair the session. So I will introduce Dr. Jyoti Upadhyay. Meanwhile, she is joining. So she has done her M.Pharm in clinical pharmacy and PhD in pharmaceutical science, and currently working as assistant professor in School of Health Sciences, UPES, Dehradun. She did her PhD in the area of maternal and child health, where she identified the cases of congenital disorders and studied the impact of persistent organic pollutants on the risk of birth defects. She has 5 years of research and 7 years of teaching experience. Her area of interest are the maternal and child health related disorders, neuroscience, pharmacology of drugs, and pharmacotherapeutics. In research, currently she is working on OSTEM and cerebral palsy, developing some novel interventions for the treatment of these disorders. She has published more than 35 research and review papers in SCI and Scopus Index journals. She is domain expert of clinical research related studies, and she can contribute in this clinical study, sample selection, inclusion and exclusion criteria, and result interpretation. She is also working as coordinator of Pharmacovigilance Center at UPS affiliated by NCC PVPI Ghaziabad. So with this note, I would like to welcome her and to moderate this session. I hope she has joined. Yeah, she has joined. Yes, ma'am, you can continue. I have already introduced you to the audience. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, so very good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for attending this session on pharmacovigilance. And this is the second session. We are continuing after lunch. And for this, I'm introducing our session chair and the speakers. The session chair is Dr. Medha Joshi, who is the consultant health profession education. She was former academic positions she has held as a professor and head allied health sciences, FLASH, RUAS, Bangalore School, MSU Bangalore campus principal, as well as Bill Care Research Academy, Bangalore. She has also worked as professor and head Department of Pharmacology and director Medical Education Cell, MS Ramaiah Medical Education Cell, Bangalore. She has also worked as faculty at Fmea Regional Institute, Coimbatore and Ludhiana, adjunct faculty at Department of Medical Education, UIC College of Medicine, Chicago, USA. She has 40 years of teaching experience and a total number of publications, like more than 50 publications she has. And she has also worked as director, Medical Education Unit and professor pharmacology, International Medical College, right? So we welcome Dr. Medha Joshi for the session chair. Welcome, ma'am. And now we'll introduce our speakers later on. First, we have a small talk from Dr. Medha Joshi.
This is a surprise. Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. There is no small talk from Dr. Medha Joshi, except to say that I'm delighted to be on this forum, and the proceeding that what happened in the morning were very informative, excellent, very lucid presentations, and I hope all the participants who have joined would expect the same thing in today afternoon and tomorrow also. Very rich, informative conference this is going on. So thank you, Chinmay, and thank you for inviting me to chair this session. And
Thank you
yeah,
so much.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we can continue, ma'am.
Okay, so we also welcome our speakers, Riddhi Doshi, Dr. J. Vijay Venkatraman, and Kishan Nanda. So I'm introducing one by one, like the introduction of our speakers. Riddhi Doshi, at presently, she is working with Saturn System Private Limited as head and subject matter expert pharma regulatory. She has worked in pharma regulatory compliant software, provides subject matter expertise in pharmacovigilance, CDISC, SDTM, regulatory information management, medicinal product management, and aiding in the software development. She has experience of more than 15 plus years in pharma regulatory field as SME and business analyst, keeping her up to date with the guidelines of various regulatory agencies in pharmacovigilance domain. So she has an expertise in pharmacovigilance operations, efficiency optimization, and compliance. So welcome, Riddhi Doshi, and we have a small talk from our speakers. So I hope you, thank you for coming as a speaker for attending this session.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you, Global Pharmacovigilance Congress, to give us such a platform where we can talk about pharmacovigilance and enhance the technologies for the use of better adverse event registrations. Just give me a moment. Let me know once my screen is visible and even my presentation, and I'm very much audible, right?
Yes, both.
Thank you so much. So you can see my first slide, right? Which says about PV Edge and about my today's topic. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about automation in drug safety and pharmacovigilance. I, as mentioned, that I'm working with certain system for more than 15 years as subject matter expert. Today we will today I would be talking on how automation can be introduced into the pharmacovigilance and case management, which will help companies to reduce, to increase the productivity in the process of case management reporting of adverse event and to authorities and other business processes as well. So how we can implement the automation in PV activities, which can increase the productivity. Most of us are very well aware that pharmacovigilance industry is booming at a very rapid pace. So in earlier sessions, what I heard was there are almost 6 lakhs plus adverse event been registered. So we can assume that it is rapidly increasing, not only in the field of drug vigilance, it is also increasing in the field of cosmetology, in the field of food safety, into vaccine vigilance and all those spaces. So we are increasing, the pharmacovigilance is increasing in multivigilance. So most essentially, and it is very much necessary to have and identify the robust multivigilance safety case management solution, which can evaluate, analyze the AE and its reporting to the regulatory agencies. Also, we know that due to the digital advance space, as mentioned, e-reporting has increased enormously, not only from one source, from multiple sources, we see the adverse event being registered. So from last 2 years, as per the analysis, more than 30 to 40% of increase have been reported for the reporting of the adverse event through social media, through regulatories, spontaneous cases, through literatures, from the local literatures as well. So managing multivigilance safety database effectively and efficiently has definitely become more and more challenging as companies are facing enormous increase in the volume of the cases and multiple sources as well. So a better way, very much better way to have higher standards of right method and right automation method and right technology at the right place is very much necessary to reduce the tedious and repetitive tasks, which can be reduced, and also to have very quality data to remove the user errors and to have a better signal detection in that base is has become a high priority. So to have a better way to have a higher standards of efficient and effective PV process and case management is in a solution which can automate, which can reduce the time consuming part of the process, or those part where the much expertise of human intervention is not required, is very much, has become very much first hand step to be taken by the pharmacovigilance industry. So I would like to mention that nearly each and every process in the workflow, in the safety and pharmacovigilance workflow, can be automated, which can lead to key success in understanding how the various types of automation functions will well fit into the overall process. So we've known through this sessions that there are many challenges which are faced during the from starting of intake till the submission to the regulatory authority, creating the aggregate reports. All from starting till the end, there are multiple bottlenecks or time-consuming tasks which have come up. So we'll just look into all the challenges which are faced. So major challenge which I found is during the case intake and triaging, which is most resource and time-consuming task, which is potential bottleneck in the field of case intake. So we know that there are multiple sources, as I mentioned. Through we receive enormous amount of R2, R3 XMLs from the portals, from EV portals, GVMHRA portals, from all those portals. Enormous amounts of XMLs are received, which needs to be databased. The literatures are received from PubMed, Embase, and even the local literatures are received. The events and drug coding through Excel sheet, through line listings are received from a few of the authorities, Health Canada authorities. So we can see the number of events received by a company from the different varied sources, reading all those cases, reading each and every cases, triaging that, listing down the drugs, listing down the activities, opening those resources, segregating the cases into MH, non-MH, looking into the duplicate case, whether it has already been databased into the system or not. So all this is a very, very tedious task, and not only tedious task, it's a very time-consuming, repetitive task, we can say, which generally has a pre-configured set of rules to been set to find out all these triaging activities, which can definitely overcome through the automation, which I'll definitely take it into the further slides. So once this part of intake and part of triaging is done, the next part is, as I said, extracting the data from all these cases, from the source cases, and then finding out the seriousness criteria. After finding out that parameter, based on that parameter of seriousness, prioritizing those cases. So n numbers of cases are in place, opening those cases, prioritizing those cases, and putting down in the workflow to the right team, allocating it to the team, entering each and every field, entering the data into field, which has to be errorless, which has to be validated. All this is a very cumbersome and very tedious task. Once case is being prepared, it needs to be manually analyzed whether it is applicable to which countries, where the authorization of the company has been registered. So looking into each and every country specific rules and submit, and based on that, submitting each and every case to those countries has also become a huge task. After submission, after completing all those, comes the aggregating periodic reports. So generating the line listing and preparing the Word and PDF file based on those line listing received does take a lot of time. So these are overall places where a huge challenge have been faced in the sense of a repetitive work, in sense of same work or same algorithm to be run each and every time, same rule sets needs to be run each and every time, and takes away a lot of energy of the PV team in the PV department. So let us look at how the automation is helpful and can be applicable in each and every PV process. So as I mentioned earlier, that most of the PV processes can be automated. So at each and every workflow level, we can use the automation and can be applied to reduce the workload. So during case intake, robust enough to extract the unstructured stuff. The systems will be robust enough to extract the structured, unstructured data from incoming safety source database, may that be paper source, may that be literature abstract, may that be XML, R3 XML. Convert all this data into the structured E2B field, which can directly, automatically, which can be ingested into the case management. So the major task of case entry can be reduced. So you can see how much time can be saved of a user to reduce that case entry part. So this whole process can be automated. Along with that, the triaging activity, that is finding the duplicates. So we know that there are certain set algorithms, there are certain set rules or parameters which needs to be checked to find out whether the case is a duplicate case or a non-NH case. So that can also be automated, finding out, extracting through a simpler and a time-saving space. The parameters such as seriousness from the case can be identified, and based on that, the user can, or the system can, if automated, can prioritize that case. And along with the automation, it can also put into the right workflow and can be allocated to the set of users as well. So saving of the time and the simpler way can be achieved through the automation. So rule-based algorithms can support the triage process, and in order to reduce the current manual workload. So already with the intake and triage areas of potential bottleneck that every safety organized pharmacovigilance organization faces are eliminated. As I said, data entry is the next step to be undertaken. Through the source document can be converted into E2B field, and most of the fields can be database, can be automatically ingested into the case management once the fields are extracted and are sorted into the E2B field. So after having most of the field entered into the case management, the next part comes the auto-coding of the MEDRA and auto-coding of the WHO drug dictionary. So that can, by finding the synonymous event, synonymous drug from the dictionary, can auto-code those parts, and also generate the verbatims and auto-generate the narratives as well through automation part. So as we saw that from the intake, triaging, prioritization, case entry, to the coding, all these parts can be automated today, and automatically generated narratives can approximately use an intelligent architecture which can have certain syntaxes, certain grammars already inbuilt into the system, and can generate the narrative. So however we can standardize and put certain algorithms and rules to run through all this information from starting till the time we finish our case processing. There are other processes also which are business processes which can be taken into consideration and can have automation in that. For example, finding the quality, doing the quality review or the productive review of the users, of the teammates, like at case level, what are the errors, or how can the accuracy can be achieved by using certain formulas, by putting down certain percentages, and can be found out that which team member and what is the percentage of the accuracy that team member has achieved, the number of cases the team member has processed in a month. So all these productivity and accuracy management can also be automated. Along with that, once all these things are completed, we would go for the regulatory submissions. So in that case also, we can have auto reporting module, auto case reporting module to the regulatory agency. So auto firing country specific rule for each and every cases, looking down into the marketing authorization detail of the client, and then firing those rules and directly connecting it to the gateway will reduce a hell lot of time of the users to sit and select each and every ICSR, submitting it to each and every authorities. So all these can be automated, may that be XML, COMS or MadWatch. And along with that, as I said, there are certain aggregate periodic reports are being generated by the team, by the submission team. So all these can be all the line listings and aggregate reports which are generated from the database, from the case management database, can be collated together, narratives can be prepared, and based on that, the PSURs and PEDR reports can be generated in the Word document or in the PDF document, which will gain a lot of time saving for the users. They just need to look all the information which has been already preloaded and pre-configured, pre-entered into the Word document. And not only that, the document can also run through the workflow as being taken care by the company through their SOPs, and can also have a management of that document into the system. So here we saw till now with all the workflow from starting from the case intake till the distribution regulatory submission, and also preparing the aggregate report. So all these can be automated into the system if the correct system and correct solution would be opted and the correct automation methods are being used at the right place. All these can be achieved. So moving on to the next module, there are certain automation methods. So while talking on the previous slide, I had used the words algorithms, rules. So what are all those things? Those are the automation methods generally being used. So there are three types of method. One is RMA, that is rule-based automation, robotic automation, and artificial intelligence. So where all places we can implement or we can have all those methods used in the right place so that we can yield the correct information, or we can save a lot of time into it. So first, let us take algorithm rule-based method or automation. So as I mentioned that there are certain generally when there are a lot of repetitive tasks to be managed, at that point of time, at that process, we can use RBA, where there are certain set rules which are pre-defined and pre-given. So the algorithms can be prepared based on those set rules and can run an automation program so that all those tedious repetitive tasks can be eliminated. Like a use case, let's take for finding the duplicate cases. So we have, say, hundreds of XML files lying into our inbox for each and every ones which we have received from the regulatory agencies. We need to find whether the similar case has been registered into our database or not. So there are certain rules or certain parameters generally being followed. And based on those parameters, each and every case needs to be open, needs to be looked, all the parameters needs to set, and then find out and whether to put into the duplicate bucket or reject bucket. So that can be completely eliminated by providing an RBA algorithm automation method. And through that, you can reduce your major triaging activity of intake and prioritization. You can have your case allocation being done by set methods being processed, that these are the number of serious criteria, and allocate to the set of team. Along with that, validations at each field level can be achieved. So you can see for the accuracy of the percentage of accuracy increase and the quality increase of the data entry if the automation has been into the listedness, auto labeling, auto causality assessment can be taken place. And as I said, auto narrative based on the certain syntaxes or grammars been if implemented can be achieved. The other method of automation is a bot method. So generally, the automation on the robots are a third-party tool, which can help the user, which can completely eradicate certain human intervention in that task. Like, for example, from the EV web portal, generally at certain time frames, the XMLs are to be downloaded. So we can introduce the bot in between, wherein the bot will enter and log into the EV web portal with the production credentials. And by putting certain obligatory parameters, we can train the bot in the way that certain obligatory will set certain obligatory parameters and will auto download all those cases into the system itself. So for example, if this bot is run at around 6 o'clock in the evening by a teammate, would start that and it is auto synchronized. So it will, in the background, it will start running exactly at 6 o'clock, and it will download based on the parameters set and download all the XML files. And next day when the user would come and enter into the system, it will have all those XMLs into the system. So complete human intervention will be removed by using such bots. So this is one of the use case. Other use cases that there are multiple cases been joined into a single XML. So to divide us, to split those cases from a single XML. So that part can also be taken care by the bot, which can be implemented into the system. So these are multiple such use cases which can enhance and can be put down into the process, PV process, or a case management process as well. Another is artificial intelligence. So basically it is machine learning. So we need to put certain metrics or certain data to the machine. So we need to make machine intelligent enough so that it can completely remove certain, or not completely, it can remove certain human intelligent tasks. So it will, in short, it will mimic the cognitive human intelligence. For example, there are certain unstructured data or sources what has been received, or we can take a literature case, the abstract which has been received. So if the machine learning or AI technology is being used, it will highlight in the abstract all those keywords which are very much necessary to find out whether this is a valid ICSR case or not. And based on that, it will pick up all those information like event, like drug, the patient information, the author information, and prepare the case accordingly. So this is the place where the machine learning or intelligence comes into the picture, and readily a case would be available for further going into the further process. So there are multiple ways like natural language generation, like image reading. All those are the part of artificial intelligence which can be implemented and applicable into the PV processes, which can definitely reduce enormous amount of time and efforts being taken by the PV team. So to conclude, and I'm summing up the whole thing, that by using the automation technologies and methods at the right place and the right method used at the right PV process level, would be much useful and can completely eradicate, not completely, but can eradicate all the tedious and time-consuming tasks, will help streaming the manual PV process, and definitely will increase the efficiency and accuracy of the data, which will allow the team members to concentrate on much higher priority tasks. So by avoiding or by reducing the bottleneck, potential bottleneck, what we found, what all are the challenges, what we see or what we know can be completely eradicated in each and every PV process through automation. So companies should now concentrate on shifting more and more towards such automated solutions, end-to-end automated solution we can call, from starting from intake to the submission, directly submitting it to the agency using the gateway. So it is much necessary looking into the high volume cases being received from the multiple sources. So quickly, I would like to demonstrate, or I would like to speak on such solution which has end-to-end pharmacovigilance management and automation in place. We call it as 360-degree automation, starting from the human safety database, which has all the safety information, which we auto triaging, and also GDPR compliance, and have multi-vigilance, and other automation offerings like PV Decode, which as I said that most of the potential bottleneck what we found, which finds our intake of the cases, which can completely using the RPA, that is the bot, and the certain set of algorithms can be used to download the cases and segregating it into the different buckets of duplicate, non-MH check. There are voice recording attached automations as well for the MICC solution for taking up the inquiries and product quality inquiries and AE. And another is auto-preparing the periodic, aggregate periodic reports like PEDR and PSUR. So this is a complete suite automation solution from end to end, that is from intake to the submission to generation of the aggregate report. Complete automation can be achieved through certain such smart solution if being taken into the system, and will help reduce a lot of manpower and man efforts and increase a lot of productivity in the PV processes. So team, do we have any question and answer?
Thank you, Riddhi. It's a very interesting session. You know, it's artificial intelligence in pharmacovigilance. Nowadays, everybody is working in the field of AI ML in healthcare, and this is one of the rising field in using AI ML in pharmacovigilance, and everybody should know about the automation system which are being available for pharmacovigilance. So if anyone is having any questions, so please write the questions in the chat box.
Dr. Riddhi, does that mean that we are eliminating the human touch in all this process of by automating everything from the end-to-end automation? We are eliminating the human touch altogether?
No, I would not say that 100% eliminations. There are places, there are people in the market saying that touchless pharmacovigilance process. But there are places, so as I said, that smartly where there is a not expertise of human interventions required, we can always have automation in that. But yes, I would rather say that the future says that touchless PV processes should come, but it will come in bits and pieces. So people need to have patience and start implementing all these smaller places, all the automations, which will combine and prepare a complete suite, and slowly and steadily, once the machine has been trained and machine learning has been done, then we can definitely have a place where complete touchless process can be taken into place. Yes.
Thank you.
There is one question that is like once one of the audience, they asked, what will happen to job availability in the field of pharmacovigilance?
Yes.
So yes, if we talk about causality assessment, yes, that part, which is a medic review part, which is generally a very crucial part, which needs to be taken care for labeling as well. So if we put down automation, but yes, a bit of human intervention. So there are many other tasks which are being performed by the PV team that can be taken care by them, rather than putting their repetitive and tedious task into place. All those repetitive and tedious tasks can be completely eliminated, can have automation in it.
That means you are eliminating number of members in the PV team. Right? Okay, thank you.
But for data incorporation, we need humans, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is one more question. I would like to know which companies or regulatory authorities have implemented something like this. Thank you in advance.
Oh, so there are many companies who are in a process of having automation in each and every part. One of the last slide which I had shown was one of a company that is we have PV Edge into place and multiple other offerings as an automation. So PV Edge is our solution, which is completely end-to-end 360 degrees automation system in pharmacovigilance. Yes, and there are multiple agencies who are using the systems wherein they can intake the cases and then can distribute the cases to the MH.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to add one thing, like Bayer company, BAY or Bayer company, they have automated many of their processes, like more than 40 or 50% they are doing it by automation. It is right. That is the company. I know what about that. So
yes, so many of our client has reduced their work, so around 50 to 60% of their work has been automated.
Right.
So thank you for such an interesting and informative session. I hope everybody get information, novel information related to artificial intelligence in pharmacovigilance. So now we can continue with the next session. Our next speaker is Dr. J. Vijay Venkatraman. Dr. J. Vijay Venkatraman is a diabetologist, drug safety physician, and entrepreneur with more than 2 decades of experience. He holds an MBA degree in service management. Dr. Vijay is the first Indian to have been conferred the fellowship of the Pharmaceutical Information and Pharmacovigilance Association, UK. He has published several unique articles on a wide range of subjects. In 2012, Dr. Vijay founded Ovia MedSafe, a global pharmacovigilance consulting and drug safety services providing company based in India as well as in the UK, and has functioned as its managing director and CEO since then. He holds several honorary leadership positions in professional associations in the pharmaceutical and healthcare domains. Dr. Vijay has been serving as Indian regional editor for Global Forum, a Drug Information Association publication since 2017. He has been awarded for leadership excellence by the Indian Medical Association. Welcome, sir. Welcome for this conference. And now we are having your session. So over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me. First of all, thank you, madam. So first of all, let me thank you for this wonderful opportunity, Chinmaya and the entire Global PV Congress 2022 organizing team, and all the supporting members. This is a great opportunity to be here, and in fact, more than opportunity, I would say it's a privilege to share the stage with so many icons in the field of pharmacovigilance, and thanks to the chairpersons and for the kind introduction as well. So today I'm going to talk about something a little different than what we are usually talking. So this is more of my, I would say, perceptions and projections as how I would want the PV industry and the pharma industry to see each other as partners. Of course, pharmacovigilance is a part of the overall pharma industry, but still pharmacovigilance is not restricted only to the industry, and it is a science, very exciting science, as we have seen since morning, the wonderful session since morning. So with this, I thought I will just take you through some thoughts, and I also leave you with some thoughts. I'm not going to probably, this is something too early to think of in terms of take home. I mean, even the take home messages will be questions from which you will have to actually start thinking. So I think we will start thinking today. That's what I wanted to do along with you in the next 20 minutes. And of course, I will be happy to take some questions. So I'll share my screen if that's okay with all of you. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'm going to, does it, are you able to see this in slideshow mode?
Not yet. Yeah.
Yeah, now?
Yes. No, yes.
Yeah.
We can.
So, thank you. So as I said, my topic, what I chose when Chinmaya reached out to me, I wanted to be slightly different. So I said, pharmacovigilance of the world and pharmacovigilance for the world, leveraging India's unique advantages. What I told him as a topic. I apologize that the topic is too long, but I tried too hard, but I couldn't abbreviate it any further. Because each and every word has a meaning, and as you will see in the subsequent slides. So first of all, let me start with a disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed are personal and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Pharma for any organization. The logos and trademarks used are for education and awareness purposes only, and there is no intention of corporate violation. Okay, now let's first talk about this pharmacy of the world. I know that all of us have really heard this word during our, even when we were probably students 20, 25 years or 30 years ago. Even then we have heard this word. Probably we would have said generic pharmacy of the world, something like that. And or probably we were talking about the way we were being the go-to pharmacy for the what do you call, the unregulated markets, so called, and the markets where probably the other foreign companies were not probably interested to send their products. Maybe in that context we have heard, but I think we have grown several notches higher now, and not only in terms of generics. There are several areas where India actually leads the pharma world. So with that, let me go to the next slide. So you can obviously make out that India's domestic pharmaceutical market itself is huge. It's $42 billion according to our statistics. But I'm not going to talk about that. India is a global market. Everyone knows that, and that's why most of the global companies are also there in India. But what we are here talking about here, or what we are focusing here today, is that India is a global pharma manufacturer for the world. So here, why this becomes important is because we are ranking third in terms of pharmaceutical production by volume. And in August 2021, the interesting aspect is here. In July 2020, the pharmaceutical market, actually the market moved from 13.7% to 17.7% within a year. So that is a 4% increase, despite the COVID, or probably we could even say COVID contributed to it in a way, because India as a country was really playing a huge role at the time of the first wave when we were trying to control the infection, and in the second, before the second wave when we were actually getting vaccinated, and also obviously during the second wave. It makes, it's no secret that we were supporting through the second wave as well. So it is the 12th largest exporter of medical goods in the world, and exports stood at $24.44 billion in 2021. And we also have the highest number of drug manufacturers. Probably we always say that as a great credential that India is the country, the only country which has, or probably the second country which has the highest number of FDA approved manufacturing facilities outside the US. So that is something to be appreciated in the whole context. Often we see things like there are so many findings in the GMP inspections and all that, but we must remember that we'll have to see things in the context of the perspective that there is so much actually to happening in India from an exports perspective. And obviously there are, in a sheer matter of proportion, you are going to see quite a lot of inspection findings and all. But what we must remember is even companies based in the US and elsewhere also, they are also having similar inspection findings only. So it is something that we should see in the whole overall context, that we are actually being a very important player in the global pharmaceutical market. So we have more than 60,000 branded formulations in India alone. And as I said, what Indian pharma industry does in India is not the focus here. But it is also important because that says that we have the talent pool, and that is why we are able to manufacture for the world. So with this, let me go to explain a little more about what we did during the pandemic. India was nothing short of a messiah during the pandemic. So as I said, during the first wave, you may remember that hydroxychloroquine became a very important drug during the first wave in 2020. So Indian companies exported hydroxychloroquine to 97 countries during the pandemic, and it shipped 50 million tablets to the United States. And you may remember, not only United States, many countries had several ways of reaching out to India, and in different forms, they made appeals, requests, and whatnot to try to get drugs exported to them. So that shows we were indeed very important, even at the stage when we did not have a vaccine. So then when we had a vaccine, what happened? As of May 2021, India supplied a total of 586.4 lakh COVID-19 vaccines, which comprised of grants, commercial exports, and exports under the COVAX platform to 71 countries. And you can see Covishield, which is, although it is kind of the intellectual property comes from a foreign company and along with the Oxford University, but it is India is the hub where it has been manufactured. And speaking of indigenous vaccine, yes, we have Covaxin, which was actually indigenously developed by an Indian company. And more so, now we have Corbevax and several other vaccines are there. So which means that India is nothing short of delivering to the global market pharmaceuticals and vaccines at a time. And this is a very recent example. As I told you, we have been talking about India being the generic capital for manufacturing capital of the world. Maybe in the 90s and the early 2000s itself, we have been speaking about that. But today, during the pandemic, last 2 years, what we have done shows that we are, as an industry, we keep growing. Okay, now enough about the pharma industry. Now, coming to why pharmacogenesis is relevant. So I want, I don't usually use full sentences in my slides, but these sentences again are very important, and I really couldn't make them as bullet points because the sentences itself are quite pregnant with meaning. So let's look at the first point carefully. The pharma industry has existed for centuries, but safety was taken for granted until some disasters led to the birth of pharmacogens. So I'm sure all of you will relate to this because in the morning we had a wonderful session by Dr. Jay Prakash sir, where he was talking about the history of pharmacogens and how it has led to a lot of knowledge. So unless we learn from a tragedy, it is bound to repeat. And thankfully, we have learned a lot in the past 60 years, and that is why we have pharmacogens. What we must remember is properly performed pharmacogens activities help in augmenting the benefits while minimizing the risks associated with the medicines. So over the past 60 years, pharmacogens has made medicinal products much safer and more effective for the patients, thereby enhancing public confidence on the accountability of the industry. So this is a very important point because unless you say that you admit that you are trying your best to help the patient, and if something goes wrong, you have a system to take care of it. That puts you as a very responsible, accountable person and wins the public confidence. So obviously, when we look at the history of pharmacogens, several disasters have happened. And obviously, after the disasters, you generally, the common public, they lose hope about the system. So how we are able to regain that is only by treading the path of science. Of course, there are still some exceptions. You have conspiracy theories here and there. They right and left, they are there around us as we speak. But by and large, the scientific community has proven to the common public that we are actually evidence-based medicine. And when you say evidence-based medicine, there are only two things which we focus. One is the safety and the other one is the effectiveness. In fact, everyone agrees that effectiveness may or may not be there, but safety is something which cannot be compromised or bargained for. So pharmacogenesis is most relevant when we talk about the pharma industry and not just a minuscule compliance part. So that brings me to the next slide. Is it just a need to have compliance element? Without pharmacogens, the industry cannot function, and only for that purpose it is there. It is not contributing anything more, and it's a mere compliance engine, is something like that. Traditionally, we have unfortunately seen in that way. It is conventionally seen as a cost center, where without which it will not run. The business does not run without this department. So let Pharmacogenes department be there, and we will give salary to people working there, and we will probably buy them all the stationery, software, and all that they want. But it is not going to give us money as it is. Whereas if I invest in marketing, it will bring my money back to me. So that is a profit center. This is a cost center. Traditional thinking. Unfortunately, we are losing the larger picture if we look at only the balance sheet in this context, or profit and loss account in this context. So regulatory reforms throughout the world have made semi-regulated markets more regulated with stricter implementation. If not, I can't say this with any lesser degree of conviction. This is happening as we speak. Most of the so-called semi-regulated markets have now moved to become regulated markets, and the regulated markets are now even more stricter with the implementation. And then if you look at pharmacovigilance in the context of unregulated markets, previously it used to be said that these markets are unregulated, that's okay. Now it is not so. Even the so-called unregulated markets have some kind of a PV requirement. And what we need to remember is, in many important markets where the pharma companies have their products sold, they cannot sell the products unless they show a minimum pharmacovigilance standard globally. Like, for example, if you have to sell your product in a developed market, or in a market where you have a solid pharmacovigilance requirement, they also mandate that as a company, you must have some responsibility, and you must tell us what happens to your drug in third world countries, or unregulated markets, as you used to call them in the past. What happens there, you must tell us. Otherwise, you can't sell your drug here in our country, which is a developed country. So obviously, things are changing. And previously also, it used to be there, it was on paper. Now, these are becoming more, these are getting implemented with more seriousness nowadays. And especially in the last 2 years, what has happened is, it is not just the regulators, but all the stakeholders. You see HCPs, you see the consumers, everyone asks you, is COVID vaccine safe? Can I take it? Is it really helpful? Yeah, people say that I won't die of COVID if I take a vaccine. But what if I die of the vaccine? I'm sure many of you may have heard such questions. And beyond all that, only we have, India has achieved a very big vaccination program success, and that has made a COVID-free India possible. I wouldn't say that without that it would be impossible, but like we have led the world in terms of one of the largest, or I would say the largest contemporary vaccination programs in the world. I think this has happened in India, and of course not without questions, because when such a program happens in such a high scale, and people are bound to talk about safety so much, and never before has pharmacovigilance has been so much in focus at the level of consumers, HCPs, researchers. Everyone talks about that, and there are numerous papers published about that. So pharmacovigilance now, in the future, any pharma industry player can never say that pharmacovigilance is not so important, because everyone will ask you that question. The peer pressure has already been created, and it is going to get even bigger and even stronger if not stay at the same level. So now let's come to pharmacovigilance for the world. So when I say this topic is, again, I'm not going to talk about Indian pharmacovigilance requirements. Of course, it was wonderfully touched upon by Basu sir in the morning. So here we are talking about how India performs pharmacovigilance for the world. And then finally, I will end with saying how these both these strengths could be leveraged. So now let's first look at why India is important for pharmacovigilance. So for global pharmacovigilance, as you all know, there are several organizations which actually perform pharmacogens activities on behalf of their clients. And many of these clients are foreign companies, major pharma companies actually. And the outsourcing industry over the past 15 years has grown so big in India that it employs thousands of people. And this industry needs to be credited with the point that it has created so many thousands of pharmacogens professionals in a country where we had only few hundreds in probably around mid of 2000s. So, and I would like to acknowledge Dr. Pradeepa Nadi, who made a mention of me during her talk. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes, there are companies like us, so many companies which are actually providing pharmacogen services to the for global compliance. And why this puts India in focus is because no other country has all these combinations which you can see in the slide in front of you. So India has many academic institutions which focus on healthcare related courses. We obviously get the outcome of those institutions are trainable manpower in in terms of HCPs who are doctors, pharmacists, and other healthcare professionals who are available for the pharma industry. Scalability, and India, like sheer population, we have so many people. Like if you want to hire 300 people in 1 month, you can still do it. That is possible in India, which is not possible in any other country. And English is as the lingua franca. What I mean is that India is one country where all kinds of scientific and business studies happen in English. Unlike even the European countries, you can't have people so fluent in English as we are. I'm talking about non-UK Europe, obviously. So that gives rise to a very big advantage to India. And we have a low operational cost compared to the European countries and the US and North America in general. And what we have as a very big strength is our IT expertise. And you know, in the 90s, IT boom has actually put us in a very good position as a country that we are able to innovate in IT very comfortably, even better than our European or North American counterparts, that we have cost effectively implemented IT in several industries, and pharmacovigilance is not an exception. And in fact, that's a very fascinating point that has made pharmacovigilance affordable for India and India suitable for pharmacovigilance. So what are the types of pharmacovigilance outsourcing in India? There are large business process outsourcing companies which focus on the activities, transactional pharmacovigilance activities like literature monitoring and the case processing, huge volume, but very focused activities. And then you have contract research organizations which perform pharmacovigilance in a more holistic manner, but they derive it primarily from the clinical trial stages and they take it into the post-marketing stages as well. So the contract research organizations are focusing more in pharmacovigilance. And you have standalone pharmacovigilance service providers which do only pharmacovigilance and are focused only on pharmacovigilance alone. And as a company, they don't do anything other than pharmacovigilance. So normally you hear of full service CROs and CROs focusing on certain areas alone. We don't, I don't prefer to call PV service provider as a CRO because probably more than 90% of the work would come from post-marketing, whereas a contract research organization, the terminology is more suitable to clinical trials. So in that way, pharmacovigilance service providers are a distinct entity. And pharma companies, global companies, on their they have their own captive units set up in India. India has been very successful in helping global pharma companies, foreign pharma companies also set up their R&D units in India. Similarly, for pharmacovigilance, it has now become the norm. At least 4 or 5 pharma companies have set up huge hubs for pharmacovigilance, along with other areas as well, medical writing and other related areas in major cities like Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Chennai. So we have such things happening here. And last but not the least, PV automation, AI, and tech developers are also having India in the India as their one of their main hubs. If you may remember, there was one company which was supporting UK MHRA for their COVID adverse events monitoring, and that company was branded as, although it's an American company, it was branded as India-made product protecting UK citizens from COVID. Adverse events related to COVID drugs. So that's how it was positioned at the global scale. So that much of credibility we have developed as a country in the PV outsourcing space. So obviously I have not talked about Indian pharma companies operating globally here because they don't usually outsource. They have their own in-house setups. They have developed their own setups to perform global pharmacovigilance activities centered in India itself. So to put things in perspective, India is nothing less than the mecca of global PV operations. We have global pharma majors. As I said, they are outsourcing PV activities to companies which have teams based in India. And sometimes they also set up their own captive units, as I just said now. And you have Indian multinational companies, which I didn't cover in the previous slide. They establish in-house global pharmacovigilance. And it doesn't mean that they don't outsource. They also seek support from India-based service providers when needed. But in general, Indian companies prefer to develop their own setup, and I mean, with all the advantages, and with the service providers also being in India, it is probably easier and more economical for pharma companies to develop on their own. But I must add one word here. Not all the companies which export their drugs to other countries, the Indian companies, not all of them have the capacity or the expertise to, or probably the bandwidth to actually set up something in PV and run it. So they do seek end-to-end service providers support also. So now coming to the last couple of slides, as I said, I'm going to just leave you with some thoughts. What are the unique advantages which we should actually leverage? So point number one, what we should remember is setting up a global PV unit in India is convenient, quick, and economical. This combination, again, no other country can provide. So does this mean that there is a challenge in compliance? No, successful audits and inspections vouch for India's strength in global PV. In fact, compared to the GMP inspections, from a GVP inspection point of view, our findings in audits and inspections are not anything lesser than what they would get in other markets. Of course, GVP is for EU. If you look at the North American and other inspectors as well, still the findings are pretty much same on what happens on the other side of the world. And what we have understood is that investing in PV early in the life cycle of a pharma company has its reward. Like, you embed pharmacovigilance as a strategic part of your organization, that always helps you when you grow, because when you look at the market, companies with solid PV systems are seen as science-focused, quality-conscious, patient-centric, and responsible. I want to use these words very carefully because when you have, even you are a patient, you want to take a medicine, you obviously go to a branded drug, and you always trust the company in some way or the other. And even if something goes wrong, you tell the company, they take it seriously, they work on that, and they come back to you with the feedback. You feel that you are being treated as important by the company. So, and if they deal with science and whatever their responses and how the things happen, and in general how you are satisfied with the drug, makes you think that this company is science focused, this company is quality conscious, and therefore it is patient centric and responsible. So this is a very important factor for pharma companies to brand themselves, not only locally, in the international sense as well. And therefore, without this, you will not be able to sustain in the long run. So this is the point I was trying to make. I told you I will connect in the end that earlier people used to think that this is something, pharmacogenes is something just for the purpose of compliance we need to have. Nobody bothers about it. No, it is actually directly concerning your own consumers, your own customers. So any company would want to keep its customers happy. So a pharma company with a good PV system is actually mandatory for keeping its customers happy. So when you look for next thing is when you go for global partnerships, a company, say if you're an Indian company, you want to export to drugs abroad, you need partners, and you see partners value companies with better proper PV in place. And when you are a partner for a global innovator and you are partnering as a generic company, you partner with them to market their products within India, then also if you have a proper PV in place, you are better valued. And we must also remember such kind of partnerships have happened very successfully in the past 10-15 years. And only companies which are having good PV systems have really won these kind of contracts. And litigation related losses also fall if you have proper PV in place, because nobody here is vouching that everything will be safe for everyone all the time. But if something goes wrong, what system do we have in place? What preparedness do we have in place? I think this defines how businesses grow. And having said that, we, although it's not directly relevant, I will also say this. India also has some requirements, pharmacovigilance requirements, solid requirements nowadays. So any global company which gives you a contract to market your products within India, they will also expect that you take care of the local obligations and you have your own PV setup in place. So it can be your own or it can be outsourced, but it should be properly governed and it should fulfill the compliance requirements, and you should be answerable and you should be successful in any audit or inspections. So in other words, pharmacovigilance is an insurance policy. We all think, why should we pay insurance policy? Like, I think it's going to happen, right? But that's only a hopeful thinking, wishful thinking. But when something goes wrong only, you realize you should have taken the policy earlier. So that's way, in that way, having PV always secures the pharma industry. So finally, this is my last slide to conclude. Indian pharma industry has a bright future, no doubt. India holds a leadership position in the global pharmacovigilance domain. This has been proven a few years ago itself, but now post-COVID, we see that we have been doing a lot of safety monitoring for COVID vaccines during trials and immediately during the emergency authorization phase and post-marketing, everything we are doing. So we are having that leadership position. Everyone has to accept that today. The entire world has to accept that today. And the combined benefit is a key strength that should be leveraged for India to scale much greater heights. So without pharmacovigilance, it is evident that the pharma industry cannot grow. I'm using this word very strongly. It cannot grow today because consumers and everyone is now aware. And with the growth of the pharma industry, pharmacovigilance becomes even more relevant, obviously, isn't it? Because the more drugs patients take, the more adverse effects are going to happen, and it becomes more and more relevant. So I'll be happy to take questions. And I would like to thank you. And I hope these thoughts were relevant. And I believe this will help you start thinking in these lines. And probably 5 years later, we are talking of this topic as a success story, as how India successfully leveraged both these industries and the relationship between them for taking both the industries to be very successful in the longer run. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Very interesting session. I really agree that this session is totally different and it gives a lot of information to everyone. And I think India will also lead in pharmacovigilance too, the global pharmacovigilance reporting and ADR monitoring also. So if anybody is having questions, audience, please type the question in the chat box. So there is one question. Could you say something about material vigilance career?
Okay, material vigilance and a career perspective out of it. Okay, so it's a very interesting aspect. Material vigilance, obviously, see, in general, whatever products we use for medicinal purposes have to be monitored. Everyone agrees with that. So material vigilance is nothing but the specialized field of pharmacovigilance, which deals with medical devices. So this is becoming much more important than in the past, because now you don't have just the mechanical machines, but you have the electronic machines also coming into the picture today to treat various conditions, to monitor various conditions across the world. And there are requirements across the world for several, the material vigilance requirements are there. And you have, recently in the UK and EU, we have very clear guidelines that have come into place, and not anything lesser than that. We have our own material vigilance program of India, where it has started, the program has given recommendations for us as to what kind of monitoring should be there in place. And there are requirements for the industry as well, from the Indian perspective also. So coming to the career part, yes, it's a very interesting career to be there. The only thing is the skill set may be slightly different, and material vigilance could be far more specialized. Like when you look at pharmacovigilance, unlike you have, unless you have something very specific, like you are looking into the safety of a particular therapeutic area or something. In general, otherwise pharmacovigilance is something which anyone can handle if they have good pharmacovigilance experience. But in terms of material vigilance, your knowledge of how that particular machine works and how that actually contributes to the patient safety is very important. Apart from the core principles of material vigilance, an understanding of the therapeutic area for which that particular machine is used and how that is going to, that device is going to help the patient and what it is supposed to do, that understanding and knowledge is much more important than it is for pharmacovigilance. I'm not saying it is not important for pharmacovigilance, but in pharmacovigilance, you require such kind of knowledge only when you're doing complex tasks like signal management or risk management, probably for case processing, or even during to a certain extent in aggregate reporting. You don't need that much knowledge about the product itself. But in material vigilance, it's even for a basic activity, you need to know more about that. So that's a very specialized area, and it has a very good future.
Dr. Vijay, what would you be saying about the previous speaker's presentation of automation and pharmacovigilance? How much automation is going to change the scenario in India here?
Thank you, ma'am. That's a very important question, and everyone has that question. Pharmacovigilance, material vigilance, whatever it is, like not only this field, in general, today we have so many automotive activities. Even in our mobile phone, you have so much of automation in place. And day to day, we are talking about Internet of Things that is going to be the future. So when everything is like that, we cannot say pharmacovigilance alone can be free from automation. In fact, automation and artificial intelligence are very helpful when you want to mine huge quantities of data, and you want to take meaningful yield out of it. Say if you have to go through 1 lakh records and you find one record is relevant, it is a waste of human effort to do that. But what if that one record is important? With automation or artificial intelligence, you can do that. That one record is also saved. That one record information is also retrieved. But at the same time, valuable human time is available for much bigger things. So in terms of jobs, I believe initially there will definitely be loss of jobs. But what we must remember is that we see that this is coming. So we need to equip ourselves in the overall scheme of pharmacovigilance and understand the bigger things in pharmacovigilance, be ready for a more holistic pharmacovigilance roles, rather than stick to basic activities which can be automated. We all agree that not all activities can be automated. So there are skills, human skills required always. So we need to upskill ourselves and make sure that we are resilient enough to fight back this initial phase, because once we cross this phase, there will be a lot more activity to be performed, because much more data will be read by these machines, and you will have a lot of data. And from those data, you will have meaningful information, and that meaningful information has to be analyzed. And for that, we need people. So in the long run, definitely this is going to help, and technology is there to support us to ensure better patient safety. And I don't think that is something to be worried about.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, sir. A very informative session. So our next speaker is Dr. Carla Valeria Macedoni, and she is a pharmacist with over 10 years of experience in pharmaceutical and consumer good industry, with extensive knowledge of local and international regulations in pharmacovigilance, cosmetovigilance, and technovigilance. Proactive, committed, and fast learning professional with experience in leading diverse teams and environments across Latin countries. She has, interest in developing and implementing activities focused on patient centricity and empowerment, like International Day of Patient Safety, as well as active participation as a member of the International Society of Pharmacovigilance, Argentine Pharmacovigilance Association, and Mexican Pharmacovigilance Association. So welcome, Doctor, and over to you for the session on medication error in pharmacovigilance.
Well, hi, good morning, good afternoon to all. Thank you for your welcome. I will share my screen. Just let me know when you can see it. So,
yes, we can see.
It's okay. Okay, great. Well, as I was saying in your welcome, my name is Carla Macedoni. I live here in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. I'm a pharmacist from the University of Buenos Aires, and currently I'm country safety head for Sanofi and CHC products. For the beginning, I need to mention my conflict of interest statement. The following presentation is a compendium of ideas and concepts created by me and my experience, and they do not necessarily represent those of Sanofi. The agenda for today, the idea is to talk about concepts about patient safety, type of medication errors, pharmacovigilance, and lessons learned about these medication errors, common medication errors that occur, regulatory initiatives from the industry, from local health authorities for the management of these medication errors. So patient safety. When we talk about patient safety, we are talking about a discipline that emphasizes the reduction, the reporting, the analysis in safety healthcare, and emphasize this safety in healthcare to reduce, as we say, these errors that occurs and the common unnecessary adverse events with harm that they can be avoidable. So as mentioned here in Hippocrates so many years ago, the first thing is do not harm to patient. Regarding this, we need to talk about two things: the rational use of medicines and medication errors. These two are unnecessary and unsafe medication practices that we can, or we need to understand that today, currently, is a leading cause of harm in patients. And as we say, is avoidable. So we need to work in how to implement measures and plans that can help to us as healthcare professionals, as patients or caregivers, to avoid this in the future. So as you can see here, just to say something related to numbers, more than 50% of medicines are prescribed, dispensed, or sold inappropriately. So if we read this, we understand that the half of the patients are taking the medicine incorrectly. So this is a big number that we need to correct. And related to deaths due to medication errors, here you have another numbers. And in this book, they made an analysis. It's very interesting if you can read it in the future. They mentioned that more people die in each year from medication errors than, for example, workplace injuries or car accidents or breast cancer. So with these two slides, I would like to remark that this is avoidable. We can eliminate, not only a reduction, we can eliminate this, and we have to work for that. So the WHO is doing a lot of effort regarding this, and they launched the third Global Patient Safety Challenge that started in 2017, medication without harm. And obviously the main goal is to avoid and reduce, at first is to reduce this 50% that we talked in the beginning related to harm and drug use over 5 years. So this year, 2022, we are in the 5th year, and that's why the WHO decided to this year include this concept and this challenge actually in the Patient Safety Day for September. So here you can find the 4 objectives, and I would like to invite you to join to this event. It's a good idea that if we can implement all the awareness that they provide to us and contribute to the community to start to maybe apport in this reduce of the 50% of medication errors and medication without harm. So these are the 4 objectives for this year. And if you didn't know, in the page, the web page, you can find a lot of materials and webinars you can share with your colleagues or your family, actually, because it's for all the community. Another initiative that they have is 5 moments for medication safety. And this was created for patients, families, and caregivers. The idea of this document is one, as patient has a tool to ask to the physician or any healthcare professional about my treatment and understand my treatment. So are 5 moments with 5 questions each one. So the patient can understand in a better way how they have to take the medicines, why they have to take the medicines, and all that. Another important thing is that for health professionals, obviously, is the idea to promote this and promote the patient engagement with this document. So as healthcare professionals, we need to understand these 5 moments for medication safety and promote the use of this in our patients. And finally, the other document that was created in last year, and obviously is a patient safety action plan, extensive from 2021 to 2030. But in this case, the idea is to eliminate the avoidable harm in healthcare. And in this case, we need to have an interaction with all important stakeholders, governments, local health authorities, industry, patients. So it's a good document to read and to understand in a better way in which objective we can be and give our support to reduce this or eliminate. Actually, this is our goal. It's too hard, but it's the idea. So I was talking about medication error, I was talking about harm, and I would like to share with you that medication error is an intentional failure. So when medication error causes harm, we are talking about adverse reactions. As you can see here, we have this picture or graphic that split in which was a medication error without harm, preventable, not preventable, sometimes are not preventable, but we need to work in this part that are preventable adverse event reactions. So preventable, the main words that we need to understand about medication error is unintentional, are preventable, and incidents, and are related to an error, the most of them, the human error. So the problem is that all these situations cause harm and injury in the patient, and most of the time cause the death of the patient. So that's why we need to avoid them. They are preventable. They not need to occur. And something important to, I don't know if you can see there, is the difference between medication incident and medication error. Medication incident is very used as a term very used for patient safety associations. So when an adverse event is related to the use of the medication. And medication error is how we define this unintentional harm that occurs in the patient with the medication for a human error. This is very, was published, I think that 2 weeks ago or this week, are the 10 type more frequent medication errors with most serious consequence in patients. So if you can see this year and last year, if I didn't put the 2 years, but if you can see later, both years, the most of them are repeated. So that is very sad because it was no reduction about that. It are medication errors that repeat and repeat over the years. So the first one was incorrect identification of patients. And then obviously we have a lot of more related to LASA error, the similarity of name of appearance of drugs, the administration. So we are going to see some examples about that. The classification of medication error could be by stage. And here I put in which stage we are going to see some examples: prescription, transcription, verification, dispensing, and administration. In prescription, we are talking about the written medical order. Sorry, I saw a, as you can see here, we have a lot of examples related to prescription. And in example, a real example occurs in this patient, a 70-year-old male patient, weight 60 kilograms, was prescribed with a low release of oral morphine tablets twice daily. After taking 4 doses of this oral morphine, the patient was confused, hallucinating, and drowsy. So he was admitted in the hospital and was there for 6 days, receiving naloxone to recover. What happened here? The problem is that for a patient with this weight, we need to start with 20 milligrams twice per day. And they start directly with 60 milligrams twice per day. So the dose was incorrect. And that's why the patient suffered this avoidable harm. I will use avoidable because it's the idea. Related to transcription, verification, and dispensing, this is always another error that we have, unfortunately. And in this example is a dispensing error, and this occurs in Colombia 2 years ago during the pandemic, I think so. By error, the pharmacist dispensed another drug, not the prescribed drug, because she confused, as you can see here, the packaging is similar, is identical, actually. They confuse albendazole with tramadol. Sorry, I hear voices. So the pharmacist gave to them, to the parents, tramadol instead albendazole, that is an antiparasite. And the two children died, one 7 age and the other one 10 years old. So this was a fatal consequence. And administration, I put this example that is very knowledge in pharmacovigilance, but unfortunately continue happen. And that is something that I am talking about. We need to learn about these situations. We need to not repeat this in the future. So as healthcare professionals or as patients or family or caregivers, we need to know all these cases and try to not repeat, be informed. And that's something that I would like to ask to all of you, be informed and communicate this to the community, train the community, train the patients, train the healthcare professionals. This can be occur again and again and again. We are talking about families that suffer and they are destroyed because the death of the family, a son, a parent, etc., or a harm that they don't have any revert. So as you can see, this was the case 14 in Grand Britain. So 14 times happened the same, and that is crazy. And 10 of the persons or patients that suffered this died, and the other victims were paralyzed. This was in Great Britain, but if we go to our example, in 2005 in Spain happened the same. What was the medication error? Was that the route of administration of the alkaloid, the vincristine in this case, was administered intrathecally instead intravenously. So if you can see, we are talking about 1985, and 20 years later, we have the same issue, the same medication error. And the problem here is that they are not being training, the nurse are not being training, and then we are looking for a guilty. So they punish this person. Maybe she doesn't have the training that she deserves. So the World Health Organization published a communication regarding this in 2007 that vincristine and other vinc alkaloids should be given only by intravenously. This is a process, that was provided by the Garrahan Hospital in Buenos Aires. Is a pediatric hospital, and they create this process that, as you can see, is very simple. But the idea of this process is to know who has to intervene in each step to avoid any medication error. So as you can see, they put here if it's the physician, the pharmacist, the nurse, and they use this to detect and avoid medication errors in children population. That is very, very, very important. And the errors that we have with more % of occurrence are the prescription and the administration. I know that I don't have so much time, so I will move forward, but in my presentation, when you receive it, you will have all the categorization according to the error severity, but we were from category A to category I, and category I is the error that caused the patient death. It's more critical. So some predisposition factors that lead to the medication error are the medication error associated with the performance and cognition problems. This is the thing that I say, that the training is very important in all levels. in patients, in healthcare professionals. We need to be training. We need to have the knowledge. Errors type LASA. These errors are related to looks alike, sounds alike, similar appearance, and similar phonetics. Off-label, use not indicated or approved, a mathematical error when you have to calculate the dose. This happens a lot in children population. And just to share with you the cost and the financial impact that we have in the healthcare system in some countries, here you can see in Spain, in Germany, United Kingdom, and France, the estimate of the national annual cost that has these medication errors in talking about money, unfortunately. And just think that this is avoidable. If we prevent this, we don't have to waste our money in this. We can use it for another things like a better healthcare system, a better training to our healthcare professionals, wherever. But we don't need to spend this money in something that is preventable, is avoidable, and it doesn't exist. So how can we apport in this error reduction? Well, at the beginning, we are talking about reduce or eliminate. Obviously, if we can reduce, is a good way to start. And the main goal is to eliminate, but we understand that it will take a lot of years to achieve that main goal. So we need to reduce or eliminate the possibility of errors. And we are going to see some initiatives that were implemented to support this, this principle. Make errors visible. The important thing is to communicate and learn about that. If we hide these errors, the most of the people, we don't learn about what happened, and this will be repeated again and again and again. Minimize the consequence of errors. This is related to not looking for a guilty and punish them. We need to look for a responsible person that she can or he can talk about what happened, explain what happened, and create then a CAPA plan action to not commit the same thing in the future. Report and analyze internal errors. This is more related, for example, in a hospital. And obviously report errors externally, report these errors to our local health authorities. So some strategies to reduce this error is to have reporting systems. Sometimes, because of budget, we cannot implement a reporting system, a validated reporting system. But sometimes, a few hospitals here, at least in Argentina, they have an Excel spreadsheet and they have that as reporting system. So it's a good idea. Review of errors. So we need to understand if these errors are repeating over and over and over the years, or we have it reduced or not. Identification of system weakness. We need to understand the Swiss cheese, as we say, the barriers that we have in our system to block any possibility of errors, or human errors. Procedures in place, training, the information has to be available. And safety committee in case of hospitals where an interaction with another colleagues helps to us to have a communication, a fluid communication, and understand the experience of the others healthcare professionals. This is an initiative implemented by the FDA. This is from May 22. They published these safety considerations, and the idea is obviously to promote the safe dispensing, administration, and use of the products. So from local health authorities and regulators, they can obviously create and publish guidance, rule-making process, and the idea is to work together. All the stakeholders have to work together and see which is the best way to reduce these medication errors. Another another initiative, but by the Garrahan Hospital in Buenos Aires, is to have their own list of their own list of medication with high risks. So, as I mentioned before, they are a children's hospital, so they put all these drugs that they are aggregate to the Institute for the Safe Use of Medicine in Spain. So they add this one to that list. Another initiative that is very used here, at least in Argentina, I think that is in all countries, but it was the FDA approved this list of generic drug names with Tolman letters. And I will show you how it's implemented here in the hospital. And the idea obviously is not to confuse one drug with another one. We talk about the similar, sounds alike, looks alike. As you can see, is very similar in sounds and appearance. And the other is in this hospital, they have information related to the consensus of dosage. We need to understand that for children, it's very hard to have in the insert on the label for children. So they need to adapt the formulation for them. So they have these books that are using in the hospital to have a consensus and use all the healthcare professionals the same guidance. Well, what we should do or what can we do? As you can see here, we have a lot of initiatives, and the main idea of this slide is that you need always to think about low cost and high impact. So we are going to implement, obviously, all initiatives that has a low cost but a high impact. If we have a high cost and low impact, don't do it. You are wasting your time. Another document I would like to share with you, but I will share with you the link so you can see it in the webpage, because here is tiny the letter. But this is a poster that was created for the Patient Safety Day in 2020. The idea was to make like a survey in different countries, as say here in the 5 continents, and understand a little more about medication error in their countries. In summary, I would like to share with you that some countries, they don't have any regulation about it, so the local health authority is not requesting to report these medication errors. In other countries, yes, we need to report the medication errors, for example, in Argentina, but the most of the people don't understand the concept of medication errors, so they don't report. And in other countries like Australia, they have implemented a lot of initiatives at hospital levels, industry level. So in worldwide, we need to work a lot in a medication error concept, and local health authorities also to receive these reports from the community. If we don't understand or we don't know this concept of medication error, the most of the people or healthcare professional, it will be not be reporting that. An important thing is that most of these countries, the healthcare professionals are afraid of the consequence. As I mentioned before, we are not looking for a guilty, we are looking for a responsible to understand what happened in that situation, but it's complicated. So the most of the time when an error occurs, they are not visible and they are not reportable. Another initiatives by local health authorities and pharmaceutical industry These are examples for Spain. We have the colchicine overdose, and they changed the label, and the local health authority sent a communication, a notification to all the community about the colchicine and these cases for overdose. And this is a good example. I like this example that is from Grifols. They have, unfortunately, an erroneous administration because the packaging, as you can see, was not clear. So they have 1 death and 2 seizures related to erroneous administration. So the pharmaceutical industry, Grifols, changed the packaging and changed the labeling just to inform in a better way how to use it. Send the communication to all the healthcare professionals and works closely with the institute in Spain. So as you can see, the idea of these slides is to show that we can all give support in any way from our work, our daily work as pharmacovigilance, regulatory, hospitals. We can implement a lot of ideas to reduce and, unfortunately, in a few years, eliminate these medication errors in our patients. The key message, mistakes are for learning, not for repeating. I was talking about that in all the presentation. The idea is to learn about that and implement CAPA plans or new processes, trainings that allows to us to not repeat again and again and again. In pharmacovigilance, this is very important. We saw in the poster that each country is different in the 5 continents, and we only have 8 countries in that poster, but we need to harmonize concepts and obligations. Each local health authority requests or not to report this medication error. So it's very difficult to have this information and this visibility. That is what happened in each country. So this is very important. And here is a study in 2017 that shows that the most of the errors was related in prescribing and in administration that we saw in a few slides before. And the most of these adverse events or medication errors occurs obviously in a hospital, and as we mentioned, could be preventable. So the idea is to prevent this. And well, this is a phrase that the quality of a physician is not measured by the drug that he or she prescribes, but by the drug that she doesn't prescribe. That we talked at the beginning that the 50% of patients receive unnecessary drug. So we need to obviously reinforce that concept. And to finish, the worst thing is not to make a mistake, but try to justify it instead of learn about that. And this is not only in this case, it's related to medication error, but obviously this is a message for life. We need to understand our mistakes and not justify that. We try to understand it and avoid them to not repeat over the time. So I would like to thank you to the International Society of Pharmacovigilance, the group of interest medication error, Andrea Gonzalez, that is a colleague and a friend of mine, Dr. Eduardo Lagarmarcino, he is the professor of Buenos Aires University and the chief of the pharmacy in the hospital, the Garra Hospital, and obviously the experience and all the things that I showed to you was thanks to all of them. So I will leave my contacts here if you want to looking for later. I will be available to answer any question if you have, or share ideas and create projects together regarding patient safety and medication errors. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carla. It's a very nice, informative, and interesting session. I hope everybody have taken some important information from this session. In India, you know, self-medication and over-the-counter medicines are being there, and many of the patients, they are using it without prescription. And as you said, even the medication error through the terminologies which are being associated with the medicines. So it's very interesting, and everybody should focus on these type of errors because they are also responsible for adverse drug reactions. Thank you, Dr. Carla. We have one question.
Thanks to you. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have one question from Vipin. And what is the role of TOL, meaning letter of lesser list?
Sorry, the lesson?
It was written in the chat box. What is the role of TOL, meaning letter of lesser list?
Okay.
Yeah.
The TOL meaning is, I will show my screen. The idea here, let me show, is easier to explain if you can see the example. It was an initiative from the FDA. So the idea is to avoid, I have some a slide that was hidden, so maybe we can share later with all the participants. But the idea here is we have a lot of drugs that are very similar in the sounds or the phonetics. So in FDA, they approve that we can use these Tolman letters to differentiate these drugs. For example, aceta, solamide, acetohexamide. The drug is confused with another one. So they put like in Tolman letters, which part is confused with another one. And that's why they use this in the hospital. Because you need to understand that maybe you are in the pharmacy, you are very hurry up to attend to the patient or the family. In this case are the children, so they are very hurry up all the time. And as you can see, the idea is to differentiate drugs in the part that most of the time, if you have all in tiny letters, maybe you confuse this with this one. That is the idea, to not confuse one drug with another different drug. And this is a list provided by the FDA. They create this according to the information received of the common errors that happens in hospitals or in the pharmacy related to the drugs. Which drug is confused with another one. So that's why they implement the Tolman letters, and it is an initiative approved by the FDA. It's not something local in Argentina. It's something that we use from them. I answered your question, or?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. I had one comment.
Yes.
When you showed the error, the highest percentage was from one of the highest percentage was the prescriptions, right? So I think that we can start training our medical graduates in writing the right way, right prescription. See, prescription errors, so writing the medical order, this should be stressed a lot, and maybe medical safety and medical avoiding medical errors should be a part of the teaching module for undergraduates and postgraduates also, for all the subjects in medical school.
Yeah, I agree. As we mentioned, and I think that we are all agree with that. We need to train to the healthcare professionals in all levels. I don't know if it's the same situation in your country, but sometimes here in Argentina, the physician is like the physician. So the nurse or the pharmacist, sometimes they don't want to discuss with the physician. Okay. And that's why we talk in one part of the session about these safety committees in hospital, for example. We need to work together the pharmacist, the nurse, the physician, all the healthcare professionals together. Yes. So the union is very important to work together and avoid this. As you mentioned, the prescription was one of the percent highest, and the administration. And you can see here that we have a lot of type of errors that occurs in that part. The use of abbreviations. This is like a show, but it happens that we don't understand. When we are in the pharmacy as pharmacists, we receive this written medical order, and we say, what type to put here. Here in Argentina, for example, the pharmacist call to the doctor and check if they understood or not the medical order. Obviously, if it's too hard to read it, but they do that in the most of the pharmacists here. So they check if they have to give or not that drug. That is something that is very easy to implement, and obviously is something good for the patient, because you are checking if you have to give that or not. And another thing that maybe is common in other countries is the therapeutic duplicity. Sometimes the patient goes to a public hospital and then receive attention in another hospital with another physician, and they give the same drug or two drugs difference. So we have wrong interaction or wrong medication or duplicity of drugs. And yes, we need to, it's very hard. That's why we need to start from the healthcare professionals training and understand the concept. Yes. And obviously we as a patient or caregivers train and to our patients. We are all patients, so we need to understand what happened and avoid the medication errors that repeats all the time. But yes, I agree with you. We need to train more and understand this concept.
Thank you.
I think Irene,
you.
She raises her hand. So she want to say something? Irene.
Yes. Sorry, I was reading Irene, yes, and she's saying that, yes, the 30 years to prevent medication errors, and yes, it's a lot of initiatives and documents. So we invite you to read it in the webpage, because we can implement a lot of ideas. This is very important. I put the links of all these web pages, the WHO, the ACMP, so you can go to there and you are going to find, like Irene says, a lot of information, a lot of documents, a lot of training material, webinars. So you don't have to invent anything. You have everything there, and it's available for us, it's for free. So use it and share with your colleagues.
So
Thank you.
Speaker.
Okay, so I would like to invite our next speaker.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, may I add something? I would like to yes. I just wanted to highlight that the ISMP, the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, they have set up some tools which are self-assessment for medication safety, and it's going through all the process in the hospital. Every little prescription administration, storage, training of the patient, training of the healthcare professional, and you have to set up a multidisciplinary team, and then go to all the different departments, and then you have a score at the end. And at the end, you know exactly where you are weak and where you have to do some kappa. And after that, you run again the score, and you are able to see what you have changed. And it's a very, very useful tool, and it's free. And we have used that in a small hospital, and it was really very, very efficient. I just wanted to share this experience with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I would like to invite our next speaker, Kishan Nanda. So Kishan is an adept pharmacovigilance and quality assurance professional that has accumulated diverse experience in the field of pharmacovigilance. He holds master's degree in regulatory affairs from Northeastern University, Boston. He is also a certified ISO 9001-2015 lead auditor and certified biomedical auditor. So far, he has worked with many small and big pharmaceutical companies and CROs. Currently, he is working as Associate Director, Pharmacovigilance Quality Assurance at one of the biggest CRO. He has authored and self-published a book on writing periodic adverse drug experience report in the US. He has delivered presentations and talks in many conferences, including World Drug Safety Congress and Drug Safety USA. So I welcome Kishan. So welcome in the session, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen, and it's an honor and a pleasure, of course, to be interacting with all of you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And yeah, let me share my thoughts on a topic that is really near and dear to me. So let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Let me go to the
Put it on slides mode.
yes, presentation mode. This is not letting, just a second.
At the bottom bar, sir, last. Just
Sorry,
yeah.
I am perfect. All right. So hope you're able to see my screen, and apology for the delay. So my name is Kishan, as you already know, and I'm going to talk about long-term audit planning in pharmacovigilance using something that is really near and dear to me, risk-based approach. So first of all, of course, the mandatory disclaimer out of the way. All the views and thoughts that are expressed are not of my employers, are personal, of course. So this presentation will attempt to convey the essentials of risk-based approach in planning pharmacovigilance audits for companies, especially expanding in new and emerging markets. And my promise to you is that in next 15 to 20 minutes, I will talk about why we should do risk-based auditing in pharmacovigilance and how we can efficiently do it. So if we talk about pharmacovigilance audit planning, as we may already know that there are three levels. First is strategic, which is the audit planning for the period of years, and most probably 5 years. Then the level would be tactical planning, which is the set of audit targets in a given year. So whom we are going to audit, how we are going to audit, with what frequency and what priority in given year. And then there will be an operational audit for a specific audit at hand. So we are not going to talk about operational audit, which is operational audit planning, which is the planning for an audit at hand, of course, because that needs to be done based on the specific needs of the audit or the audit target. But we are going to talk about strategic and tactical level of audit planning that talk about whom we audit, how we audit them, with what priority and what frequency, who is getting audited first and who is getting audited second and thereafter. All right, so to ensure quality and compliance, of course, we need to do PV audits. In case anybody has any doubts as to why we do PV audits or pharmacovigilance audits or drug safety focused audits in our industry. So it goes without saying that, of course, pharmacovigilance activities are necessary to protect public health. And that's why we need to audit for quality and compliance, or rather assessment and ensuring that quality and compliance are on par within those pharmacovigilance activities, which are very crucial for protecting public health. And also our practice of performing quality audits in pharmacovigilance might have something to do with the fact that we are required to do that by law. So we definitely want to avoid any legal trouble by not performing PV audits, because the worst kind of trouble, as they say, is the legal trouble. There's another reason why we need to perform PV audits, of course, and seek efficient planning on that, because we may have several audit targets within our organization. As Archimedes said, give me a lever and a place to stand and I will move the earth. What every QA team tends to say is give me an unnaturally long year and unlimited resources, and I'll make sure that I'll audit every entity. Both of these things are not possible. Why? Because of course, pragmatism. We only can audit so many entities or so many targets in a given year or in a given period, and it is not possible to keep auditing everybody or every entity at the same time every year. So that is why we need to seek efficient planning in PV audits and determine whom we are going to audit first and whom we are going to audit next. So there's another reason as to why we need to seek efficient planning in PV audits is because companies nowadays are opening offices or expanding in their territories left, right, and center. If they can open an office in a territory, of course, the next question that they tend to ask themselves is, what are we waiting for? So almost with the same ferocity as Judge Judy, if you watch that show. If they cannot open an office or expand in a territory on their own, what they tend to do is that they tend to find a buddy or a fellow pharmaceutical company. They go to them and they say, can you sell my drug? Or can I sell your drug? Or maybe can we both sell this drug? So if the answer is yes, the next obvious thing to say would be, let's do this, of course. And so what this results in is increasing number of affiliates, partners, service providers, and that too often with complex relationship to audit than ever before. And that is why we cannot audit every single entity with the same rigor, but we need to base that decision on risk and priority. So what efficient planning means in the space of PV auditing is determining the audit priority based on risk, as we said. It is basically the philosophy that we need to look first in the area where it hurts or it may hurt the most. Some people will have obviously more than one kid, and they will probably resonate with the philosophy that some of your kids require a great level of oversight, whereas some other kids probably are going to be fine on their own and you don't need to check up on them, and they don't really need auditing per se that much. So it is the same philosophy when it comes to your audit entities or your service providers or your business partners or your internal processes. We're going to try and look at the areas that are more risky or where failures are likely to happen more than others. So if we talk about the official definition of risk-based auditing in pharmacovigilance, we need to consult, of course, the principal guiding light that we have in our field is GVB Module 4, which says risk-based approach is that one uses techniques to determine the areas of risk where risk is defined as probability of an event occurring that will have an impact on the achievement of objectives, taking into account the severity of its outcome and likelihood of its non-detection. So these are the factors that we are focusing on when we are trying to develop an audit program based on risk. So probability of something going wrong, severity of it or the impact of it, and of course, likelihood of its non-detection through other methods. So we have two principal methods at our hand that we can use, of course. None of these are mandated by regulations. One is Fmea inspired method, which is failure mode effect analysis. The other one is PICS, or Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme inspired method. Both of these methods, or a combination of it, can be used to create a risk-based audit program within your company. So we're going to talk about the philosophy of both of these methods first. We are going to check what we need apart from the philosophy of the methods, what other ingredients we need to try and assess the risks of our audit targets and build the audit program based on risk. And then we'll also consider an example of a fictitious business partner, and we'll see how we can analyze or estimate the risk for that and determine the audit priority for that particular business target. So business partner as the audit target, of course. So let's see what we actually need to implement risk-based audit program. So first of all, of course, we need a set of criteria for all of those audit targets that you have in your company. So you will have perhaps business partners, maybe 10, 20, 50, 100, 200. So you would need a set of criteria to evaluate all of those business partners that you will consistently apply to all of those business partners, of course. Then you will have perhaps affiliates in different territories and regions. You would need a set of criteria for those. Your internal systems and processes will need a set of criteria for evaluation of risk. Then perhaps your service providers and vendors would also need a set of criteria for evaluating the risk. So we need those set of criteria, of course. We need philosophy or principle of any of the methods that we choose, PICS or Fmea, or maybe a combination of any of the two methods. And then we need a scale and a possible value for calculation, and outcomes, of course, the risk score or the audit priority that we can use to build and sustain the audit program. So I know this is this is at a high level, of course, but all of this will make sense when we consider the practical example and run through that example via both the methods. So let's talk about just the philosophy part first. Let's discuss FMEA in that. So it was adopted by US military, of course, to evaluate where failures might happen during their military operations. Then subsequently, it was adopted by EPA, Environmental Protection Agency in the US. Then Ford and Toyota jumped in, of course, and they adopted the method for risk analysis using this FMEA philosophy. Currently, American Society for Quality serves as the knowledge bank. If you refer to their website and their material, you will find a lot of information on FMEA and how to implement that depending upon what industry you're coming from. So principle remains very straightforward and simple. Risk priority number as per FMEA, or risk score, whatever you call it, is the combination or multiplication of severity. So something that goes wrong, how severe that can be, likelihood, how likely it is to occur, and non-detectability, how difficult it is to detect it before the error or the failure happens. So if you have all of these three factors, if you put them together, out comes a risk priority number. So that's basically the philosophy of FMEA in a nutshell. So this is probably how the calculation would look like once we have a score for each factor, each component, severity, likelihood, and detectability. You put them together, it tends to be generally in the scale of 1 to 10, 1 being low, 5 being medium, and 10 being high, of course. And then a scale starts to emerge. So if the final score is less than 50, you can sufficiently say that the risk score is less for that particular entity, or the risk is less. If it's between 50 and 250, you can perhaps say that, okay, it's medium, not that high, not that low, but it's medium. If it's more than 250, of course, you can perhaps claim that the risk with that particular entity is high. Again, that's the philosophy of calculation within the FMEA method. If we talk about at high level, of course, first, PICS method, it says that the risk is composed of two components, mainly intrinsic risk and compliance related risk. And in intrinsic risk, you have to take into account complexity of the process and then criticality of the process. So if you try to look at the calculation for PICS method, you would realize that first we need to calculate intrinsic score. So on the left-hand side, basically, once you have a value for complexity and criticality both, you can put it in that table that you have on the left-hand side at the top. And of course, the scale here is 1 to 3. So 1 being low, 2 being medium, 3 being high. So when you have criticality and complexity scores, you can put them together in this table and you will find the intrinsic risk score. Then in parallel, separately, you find the compliance related risk score. Make sure that it comes out as either high, medium, or low. And once you have that value, you can put them together on the right-hand side, as you can see, and you can develop or determine, or rather derive, a PICS-inspired risk score for your process or for your audit entity. All right, so let's review an example of a business partner so that we can actually try and imagine how the calculation would occur or how implementation of any of these methods would actually take place. So before I go to this next slide, of course, as I said, we need to have a set of criteria for all kinds of audit targets. So business partners would have a set of criteria, as I said, internal processes and systems, affiliates, and service provider. So I have put together a list of criteria that can be safely used for business partners. Some of those criteria are directly taken from GBP Module 4. Others are obvious criteria that would apply to business partners of any marketing authorization holder. So before I go to the next slide, I need to ask you for a promise, of course, that you wouldn't try to read every single thing, because then you might lose my attention and I get very insecure if I lose anybody's attention. So I will try and point out some of the obvious criteria, but of course, feel free to not read all the list or all of the things within the list. All right, so this is the set of criteria that if we can come up with from GBP Module 4 and by just brainstorming what generally is applicable to business partners or business partner compliance for PV. So if you look at the bottom, basically, we can ask questions like whether PVA is in place, as in pharmacovigilance agreement or safety data exchange agreement is in place or not. How much time has elapsed since last inspection, 21. If you look at 20, it talks about a KPI or quality plan or quality oversight is in place. There's something like that. in the metrics within the STA, EA, or PVA or not? So those kinds of questions we can ask for all business partners. And for a particular business partner, we can also get answers for all of these questions. So that is all we need as the first ingredient to begin with risk-based audit planning for business partners. So let's insert responses for each criterion for our fictitious business partner X. So of course, when we consider a particular partner, we'll have answers for all of these questions. So the same criteria, if we look at PVA is in place, so the answer probably is yes, let's say, hypothetically. Time since last inspection, 4 years. KPI or quality plan or quality oversight or metrics are in place within PVA or STEA. Let's say no, we don't have that. Time since last audit, when we audited them last, let's say 3 years. So we get answers for our fictitious partner business X for all of these criteria. And that's, again, the same thing that we need to begin planning audit program based on risk. So now we already talked about the Fmea method, which is composed of severity, which is on the left-hand side, likelihood of failure, which is on the right-hand side, and then non-detectability, which is at the bottom. So what we need to do is to, of course, if we are going with the Fmea method, is distribute those criteria, the 21 or 22 criteria that we had on the previous slide, across these 3 categories wherever they fit. So let's say that, if you talk about non-detectability, so PVA is in place at the bottom, that indicates non-detectability, because if PVA is not in place, of course, we are not likely to be notified of any failures or any errors or any egregious non-compliances. So it falls under non-detectability. Time since last inspection, of course, if they've not been inspected anytime recently, then we are not going to be able to detect if they have come across or they have encountered any failure. So that again indicates non-detectability. So basically, that is what we have done, that we have distributed these criteria across these 3 components wherever they fit the most. And as you know, we already had the answers for all of these questions anyway. So what we now need to do is to just develop values for all of these criteria by coming up with the scale. So for an example, if PVA is in place, if the answer is no at the bottom, I can say that, okay, the score would be 10. And again, this is Fmea, so it's 1, 5, and 10, 1 being low, 5 being medium, 10 being severe or the highest risk, of course. So if the PVA is in place, if the answer is no, the risk would be higher, so we can assign the score as 10. If the answer is yes, let's say it's 5. Time since last inspection, let's say it's more than 3 years, so then it would be 10. If it's between 2 to 3 years, then it would be 5. And if they have just been audited within the last 2 years, I think we can assign the score as 1. So obviously this would be flexible, but you need to apply these values across all of your business partners consistently. As long as you do that, it would be fine. But of course, it enjoys some flexibility, whether you call something medium or low. That totally depends upon the operations of your company. I think the philosophy needs to remain constant. So now that we have in Fmea all the 3 components and the possible values for all of the criteria according to the method, we already had the answers for our fictitious business partner X. So once we put into the context of these criteria and the answers that we had, we can obviously calculate for each of this criteria what value we can come up with for our business partner X. So that is what I've done in the last column. Basically, the answers that we had are put into context with these questions, and we have come up with these values. And by taking the average, we can safely derive the value or the score for each component. So severity, as you can see, is probably 7.5. So higher than medium, but less than, of course, the highest value of 10. If you talk about likelihood, the average value we found is 5.25, so slightly over medium. For non-detectability, let's say we came up with the value of 8.75. So that is probably very close to the high risk for non-detectability. And now we go back to the equation. We put these scores in the equation, and we come up with the final score as 344. So as per our scale that we had finalized, it seems like it's higher than 250. So the score should be high. So basically, once you do this exercise using Fmea method for all of your business partners, you would have scores for all of them. And then you can decide whose score is higher, who needs to be audited first, and whose score is lower slightly relatively, and who needs to be audited second. So that basically is the FMEA method. If you talk about PICS method, that also can be very well adopted for a fictitious business partner X. We already have the criteria that we are going to use. We already have the answers for those criteria for our fictitious business partner X. And let's try and see how we can use PICS method if we don't want to use FMEA method. So PICS, as if you remember the philosophy, it talked about complexity and criticality. Both of those will combine or intersect to form the intrinsic risk score first. And then in parallel, we will also determine the compliance risk score separately and then put them together, of course. So what I've done here is that distribute some of these criteria that we had 21 or 22 across complexity and criticality. And some will be, of course, applicable to compliance as the component. So as you can see, 7 criteria probably apply to complexity or indicate complexity of the failure or the business partner entity. 8 or 9 criteria that I have on the right-hand side probably indicate how critical the failure would be if something were to go wrong. So once we put the answers that we had, again, the same table, we already had the answers for our fictitious business partner X for all of the criteria or the question. So once we put the answers in the table, again, the values will start to emerge, 1 being low, 2 being medium, and 3 being high. So we'll need to define, of course, the possible values. But if you check some of the criteria, let's see, for an example, on the right-hand side, criticality, PVA is in place. So if the answer is no, of course, the risk would be higher. So we'll assign the score in that case as 3. If PVA is in place, let's say we'll assign the score as 2. So that's basically the possible values that we have defined. And once we put the actual answers, we will be able to finalize the score for each of this line item. And we'll take the average, of course, at the end, and we'll find out that the complexity for our fictitious business partner is just about 2, so medium. Criticality also comes out to be 2.2. So again, rounding it off as 2 would be medium. And when we put them together, our intrinsic risk score would also be medium. There was one other component, of course, for PICS, which was compliance related risk score. So the rest of the criteria out of the 22 criteria that we had fit into compliance component. So for an example, independent CAPAs, if there are more number of CAPAs, of course, that would indicate that the compliance risk is high. If we talk about some other criteria here in the table, finding from previous regulatory inspections, if there are high findings from previous regulatory inspections with business partners or your business partner, then of course the risk would be higher. If there are, let's say, 1 to 2 findings only, we can say that it's medium. And if there are no findings that they have received from the previous regulatory inspection, probably it's ideal and the risk can be considered low for that particular line item. So again, that's what all we are doing. We are defining the possible values, and then we are considering the answers that we already had, and it will then churn out the values for each of the line item, and we'll take the average at the end. So if you look at the average, it comes as 2.66. So we'll round it off as 3, of course. And that would indicate that the compliance related risk score is high for our particular business partner X that we are taking hypothetically, of course. So now we already developed or derived intrinsic risk score. We now just derived compliance related risk score. We put them together. The final value comes out as 6, which is still high. So again, the risk for this particular business partner would be deemed high. And we can do the same exercise for all of our business partners, and we'll see who is more risky or who has more risk and who has slightly less risk relatively. So basically, whether you, in your PV audit program, whether you implement PICS method, complexity, criticality, and compliance score, put them together and get the final risk score, or you go for FMEA method, you derive severity, likelihood, and non-detectability, and put them together to get the final risk score. That is slightly less important, or you can use also, of course, the combination of any of these 2 methods. What is important is that you need to have your audit program built on the basis of risk, and that should determine your audit priority, who you audit first, who you audit second, and then so on, of course. So implementation of some sort of method for risk-based auditing or for risk-based approach in PV auditing is essential. There is definitely some flexibility on what exact method or criteria you use. You definitely can consult GBP Module 4. You can come up with your own method based on these criteria, or you can have a FMEA or PICS method that are already available at your disposal. So that's slightly flexible, but what we essentially need is, of course, the audit program based on risk. An organization should conduct adequate exercises, of course, to measure and to determine which method would suit them more than the other method, and then should continue with that method consistently so that they can year on year determine which entities are more risky and need to be audited first. So that's it from me, of course, and your time and attention are worth to salute. So here you go. Thank you very much for listening to me. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them. If not now, I'll make sure to get back to you with the answers subsequently for sure.
Thank you, sir. Very nice and very informative session. And any question from the audience side or Medha ma'am?
No, thank you. I think it was an excellent presentation, very well informed and very high level presentation. So thank you very much, Dr. Kishan.
Thank you very much.
So now it's time for the next session, and which was hosted by the next moderator and next speakers and chairpersons are there. So I'll hand over this to Dr. Chinmay. Chinmay, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Chinmay.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you
so much. And thank you all the delegates and speakers. So now we will move to the next session without wasting our time. So I would like, in this session, we are going to have a panel discussion with 3 persons, and one will be the chairperson. So I would like to introduce our next moderator, Ms. Arshia Bhandari. So she is a pharmacovigilance expert and consultant with more than 16 years of experience. During her journey with Quantum Solution in India and Parexel International, she has managed diverse projects for global clients in ICSR management and medical writing. She has experience leading cross-functional teams and has helped conceptualize and establish processes to successful client deliveries. She has worked on change management and process improvement initiatives and has trained and mentored teams on various PV processes. She is also a member of ISQEI and a peer reviewer with the Journal of Pharmacovigilance and Drug Research. Further, she has initiated the PHB FIT and a thought leadership forum that works towards bringing holistic awareness regarding patient safety principles and pharmacovigilance through open dialogues. As a part of this initiative, she has delivered and moderated talks on patient safety and pharmacovigilance in various forums, and wrote on patient safety initiative in India and need for using a pharmacovigilance lens in clinical practice for Uppsala reports and Uppsala Monitoring Center publications. With these words, I would like to welcome her to take up the next session and introduce our chairperson and the speakers, the panel experts. So it's up to now it's to you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chinmay. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Chinmay, for this warm introduction. I would like to thank MKCG Area Monitoring Center, IPC Global Peace Society for organizing the conference and for this opportunity. It is an honor to be here and to be moderating this session for the dynamic mix of experts from the industry. Our panel is going to share their experiences and thoughts on the current trends, challenges and opportunities in the PV industry. Since morning, we have had a very wonderful and interesting session from esteemed speakers on different aspects of pharmacovigilance. And this discussion will be an extension of those discussions and best practices from the industry. Without further ado, let me first introduce our esteemed panelists. On the chair for the session, we have Ms. Cynthia Galicia Quintana from Mexico. Cynthia has over 13 years of experience in pharmacovigilance regulation, is a fellow of Pharmacovigilance Mexican Association, and serves as president on the executive committee. She holds a degree in pharmaceutical biology from National Autonomous University of Mexico, and is a master in health sciences from National Polytechnic Institute, and has taken courses and certifications on risk management plans, signal detection, clinical pharmacology, among others. Cynthia previously served as safety responsible for companies as Medix, GlaxoSmithKline, Stendhal, and AstraZeneca, where she had the opportunity to lead activities for Mexico and LATAM region, and currently serves as Senior Manager, Country Safety Lead for Pfizer Mexico. A very warm welcome to you, Cynthia. Next, we have Mr. Gurpreet Singh. Gurpreet is currently the Managing Director of Phoenix. Prior to this, he has worked in various global organizations like Parexel, Novartis, Tata Consultancy, and Cognizant. He has a total of 15 years of experience in global drug development, including pharmacovigilance. During these years, he has worked in several areas, which include project management, people management, transition management, operations management, quality management, and vendor management. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Gurpreet. Next, welcome Dr. Taranjot Singh. Dr. Taranjot has more than 12 years of combined pharmacovigilance and clinical experience. He is a dentist by qualification and also holds a postgraduate diploma in pharmacovigilance. Over the past decade, he has worked with many clinical research organizations in the domain of case management, medical writing, signal and risk management, project management, and quality management. Having Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certification, he has keen interest in problem solving and implementing continuous improvements to achieve process excellence. Next, we have Dr. Mukesh Gauri with us. Dr. Mukesh is a physician on alternate medicine. He has 15 years of experience working in service and pharma industry in PV. In his current role in Novartis, he is responsible for operations, maintaining governance and oversight on outsourced activities, and participating in audits and inspections. A very warm welcome to all of you. Our panel discussion today is about the current trends and challenges in pharmacovigilance. In the last 2+ years, the pandemic has thrown the healthcare industry many challenges and opportunities for growth. During the lockdowns, there was a decline in ongoing clinical trials due to the restricted availability of clinical resources and research staff. The industry worked towards decentralizing the clinical trials to meet the needs of the patients. Restrictions due to lockdowns also brought changes in work practices, routine audit, inspections. Additionally, emergency authorization of vaccines and repurposing of drugs for COVID-19 have driven healthcare and PV industry to work round the clock for safety profiling of the products. As part of a commitment to patient safety and well-being, pharmacovigilance service providing companies are aligning themselves with high-end technology backups, enhanced cloud data accessibility, automation, and effective business continuity plans to meet PV deliverables, maintaining high quality and compliance. As per a recent analysis by Emergent Research, the pharmacovigilance market is expected to be valued at $12 billion by 2027, an indication of rapid growth opportunities. The PV industry is increasingly adapting to new trends attributed to better and more effective data collection analysis. So now let us hear from our experts, their experiences and thoughts on the current trends and challenges in the PV industry. So, so we are the spotlight today. Everybody, so can everybody be on the video mode?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Gurpreet.
Yes, ma'am. We can start with first session.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I would like to start with Gurpreet, Mr. Gurpreet Singh. So Gurpreet, would you like to go first and share with us your point of view on the challenges you face in day-to-day working in your areas of expertise? And how is the industry evolving to meet those challenges? You could also talk about the trends on a global level. Do we have Gurpreet?
I think he's not there.
He's not there.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
can hear. Please go.
Sorry, I got
Should I repeat my question to you?
Yes, if you could.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my question was, could you share with us your point of view on the challenges you face in the day-to-day working on areas of expertise, and how is the industry evolving to meet those challenges? You can also talk about the trends on a global.
Sure. So I think to begin, I think been in this industry for more than 15 years. And the last 15 plus years, I've seen this industry changing significantly. Way back, I remember in 2005-06, when we used to get cases, we used to get through faxes, and people used to process those cases. Reports were all paper-based. In 10-12 years, the industry evolved dramatically to move to a paperless environment. So the industry has been evolving all these while, and the evolution continues. If you have been reading if you've been reading articles on pharmacovigilance, you will realize that a lot of digital transformation is happening, not only in the pharma industry, but also in pharmacovigilance. And I think the reason why this digital transformation is important, because we want to make sure that the efforts which are involved in managing pharmacovigilance are reduced. Also, we need to keep in mind that the trend has changed. The cost of doing pharmacovigilance activities is reducing, budgets are shrinking, as a result of which it's important that companies spend more on innovation, so that these efforts that we were using all this while gets reduced, and there is a benefit that the organization gets. The other important trend that I can tell you is a lot of focus has now been on process excellence and process improvements, because regulations are evolving. A lot of regulations govern how we manage our processes, and therefore it's important that every company, every CRO works in terms of evolving those processes and making them more futuristic. The last point from my side before I hand over back to you, Arsha, is I think the other focus is on people. A lot of emphasis is on people. A few years back, it was not that difficult to get people, but now more and more highly skilled people is what is required. The expertise that's required to manage the high-end activities is not easily available. It requires a lot of training and development of people to be able to deliver that work. So companies are investing a lot of effort and a lot of money in terms of developing people and then retaining those talent. And this has got to do a lot with the organization culture, improving the collaboration, improving the inclusivity, and making people work for you for a longer period of time. Because PV, if you ask me, is not as straightforward as any of the other activities. It's scientific, it requires knowledge, it requires experience, and companies are investing significantly in that. Back to you, Arsha.
Thank you, Gurpreet. Very relevant points shared. I agree, PV is not as straightforward. It's a highly regulated industry with very high stakes, and we need to be at the top of our processes at all times. So I would like to request Dr. Mukesh to go next. So according to you, you've been into vendor management. What are your challenges, and how is the MAH meeting them?
Thanks, Arsha, for the question. And a lot has been added already by Gurpreet about the current challenges and the trends, right? He did spoke about the ever-changing regulations and how PV, which is a complex and a very broad processes, right? PV is not only recording about or receiving and processing of adverse event. PV is much more broader than what we all have thought about. What we've also seen is this is a science which is for the patient and for the practitioners to receive the safety information, which now is moving around, right, from a reactive approach to a proactive approach, right? So from a vendor management perspective, or if you ask me what are my challenges right now in the current trends, very specifically in the current trends, what we observed was the recent change in the working style that we all had to adapt overnight, right? On one fine day, we had a situation of getting into a situation of pandemic, and we had to move all our resources from our offices back at home, where a lot of the service providers do not provide logistic supports, right? The devices that they provide or the support that they provide is more based out of offices. So a very quick one that I would want to relate right now in the current trending of challenges was how overnight all the ESPs or all the CROs had to move around their logistics from their offices to each of their individuals or each of their associates, so that they could continue to work and support the compliance of the incoming safety source information, and there was no gap that was found. So I'll take a pause here and allow others also to add on if you talk about the current challenges. Otherwise, I do not want to repeat what Gurpreet has already made a comment about. We probably would want to touch more on the current challenges. Over to you.
Yeah, very rightly said, Dr. Mukesh, because the way the industry has responded and in a very dynamic fashion towards the challenge has been, it's also a precedent for upcoming, any such disaster management, any such issues. So, Dr. Tanju, would you like to go next and share with us how your views on the trends and challenges?
Sure. So are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. As Dr. Mukesh has said, I think Gurpreet has covered it very nicely. I think from CRO perspective, I think one of the common challenges that we face is that with incoming of new technology, competition is on an all-time high. So there is a lot of focus, there's a lot of focus from the pharmaceutical companies for looking for a partner who can provide them highest level of quality, highest level of compliance, and that too keeping up with the new pace and then adapting all the new technologies. A lot of small pharmaceutical companies, I think they are looking for service providers who not even guide them in how to implement new technology, how to make the best use of it, and then even streamline their own processes. So we work with a lot of small pharmaceutical companies, mid-sized pharmaceutical companies, which do not have a streamlined process. So as CROs, as global CROs, our responsibility is to work on their processes, implement best practices across various projects, across various pharmaceutical companies, and then streamline their process. And this is where I think process excellence comes in. A lot of CROs with which I have worked, so they have a dedicated group working on process excellence, working on automation, implementing or checking out what are the new regulations, new regulatory guidelines, and how we can implement and share that with all our partners. So I think this is the need of the hour, and having a process excellence group or having dedicated groups which can provide this kind of a support, I think this is really required in these times.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Taranjot. So from what you've touched upon, we have a question of excellence. I'll come back to you on that in a minute. Let me first go to Cynthia. So Cynthia, being Pfizer, closely associated with vaccines, we would like to hear from you your learnings and experience and how the industry scaled up pharmacovigilance efforts in a short time, ensuring quality and regulatory compliance, and how PV systems evolved to accommodate the emergency authorizations of drugs and vaccines in a mass scale. Cynthia?
Yeah, thank you very much. And one of the opportunity area that we have is that, for example, as you know, we in pharmacovigilance, we have a lot of process. We have processes that are related with data entry, with aggregation analysis, risk management, PV systems, qualities, operation management. So this pandemic affects a lot and help us to redefine, to make a redefinition about how process could be more speed, how process could be implemented in order to avoid delays or in order to make more efficient the operation in safety. So one of the challenge that we have is, as you know, the regulation application in different countries. It was an opportunity area that we have, and especially in LATAM countries and some emergency countries where there is no a total alignation with regulation. So this opportunity for vaccine help us for a better understanding to the health authorities that we could try to use the documents that are available in order to make easier and faster evaluations of the safety of the drugs. Also, we had the opportunity to make some improvements about this, as Dr. Gurpet and Dr. Mukesh mentioned about the operational excellence. We had the opportunity to make some implementations that were related with digital improvements and then how can we make more efficient the data entry, and in order to make compliance and has this regulatory compliance with the agencies, not only local, but with agencies of around the world. So we had a lot of challenge that were related with resources, with the strategy, with digital impact, and of course the people.
All right. Thank you very much, Cynthia. So my next question again, it's to Dr. Tarunjot. So how important is operational excellence in the industry, and how is the industry incorporating the same? So if you could share with us your best practices. Was there an issue? Am I audible?
Sure. Yes, Archia.
Okay. Yeah, so if you could share with us how you've been optimizing and improving different processes for smooth functions in your verticals or that you're working on.
Sure. Yeah. So I think operational excellence in common words means that it is a relentless pursuit of doing things in a better way, because that is what we try to do every time in our day-to-day work, whether it is our household work or it is PV. I think the best way to implement process excellence, operational excellence, is to have a right system in place, which spots issues, which identifies issues, having a process in place which basically allows to look at the issues, look for solutions, and then finally feeding back to the system once we are improving the system, so that information is spread across or shared with the entire team. So basically, so in my organizations, what we generally do is we first look out for what are the key matrices which are relevant for a particular project or for a particular industry, because these days clients are no longer looking for partners who can achieve the goals. In fact, they're looking for partners who can achieve and exceed the goals. So basically, looking at the process, we look out for various matrices that we need for a certain process. And then in my experience, generally we are focusing on 4 main key areas. First one is people. Definitely we need to look out for whether the customer is satisfied, whether the people who are supporting or processing or involved in various processes, whether they are satisfied, whether our system or our feedback loop is efficient enough to maintain that retention or attract new talent. Apart from that, having appropriate matrices for quality and compliance, and then finally profitability. So these are the 4 main pillars. Sorry, was there a question?
Am I audible?
Yes, unmuted.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. So basically, these are the 4 pillars that we are looking at: people, quality, compliance, and then profitability. And then while looking at these 4 pillars, we also need to see that while we already have the key metrics, KPIs already in place, we need to implement leading indicators as well. So while the key matrices or KPIs measure performance, the leading indicators assess whether we are going to achieve our goal or not. So basically spotting the issues right before it occurs, or maybe before it actually becomes a bigger issue. So that is the main goal of having a robust process excellence cycle or operational excellence cycle in place. So looking holistically at these 4 areas, setting up various leading indicators, and then having a periodic mechanism of reviewing this within the project with the leadership, so that accordingly any issues, if we are observing, these can be rectified. And then finally, as I told, that the most important part is to feeding back to the system once we have implemented any process improvement measures. So these are also spread across the departments, so that the other departments also learn, and then similar issues are not occurring in other departments. So that is the whole goal, and that is how the organizations are basically looking at the overall operational excellence as a future method.
Please unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Taranjot. So, would you like to add to that on how you're achieving, or the industry is achieving, operational excellence in your area of expertise? Would you like to add to that?
Sure.
Am I audible?
Is that question for me? Is that question for me, Arshi?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, and I think Dr. Taranjot gave a very good example of how operational excellence is improving the industry. I kind of fully agree with him. So if you look at it, any industry, and specifically pharmacovigilance, there are 3 key areas that you work on. You work on the people, you work on the process, and you work on technology. And the process over the last several years has been evolving, and that has been evolving because companies are investing in operational excellence. So Dr. Tarun himself is a very great expert in the industry in operational excellence. He has driven these in many organizations. I feel that this is definitely a way forward. There is a need for processes to evolve. There's a need for these processes to be more streamlined, because in some organizations, we still continue to follow historic processes. And there are organizations which are leading us, for example. Same thing applies to digital technology. And I think Dr. Mukesh touched upon the pandemic as an important area where the pharma industry, or the PV industry specifically, was very agile. We really within a short span of time, the companies evolved to the new normal. If technology wouldn't have been there, we wouldn't have been able to do that. If we would have been working in the same 20-year-old way of working on paper, none of us would have been able to work in this pandemic situation. So I think the pandemic has demonstrated that the PV industry is agile, is technology savvy, and a lot of companies right now are actually specifically working on areas like robotic process automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence. I've also heard about companies working on blockchain, on cloud-based technology. So these are the technologies of the future. These are not things which will happen overnight. These will take time, will take a few years. But the good thing is that the industry is working on these areas, both on operational excellence and on digital transformation. And these are, I would say, the next 4 or 5 years going to be the key things for this industry.
Very, very rightly said, Gurpreet. So, what you touched upon brings me to the next question. What is the impact of digital transformation in the PV industry? And so, as you spoke about automation, the question here is how effective have been automation tools in automating the PV processes? For complexity of data, because complexity of data sources has been one of the major impediments. So, or standardization of data sources. How do you look at it? How effective has been automation, or what is the future of digital transformation in the industry?
Sure. So I think when I was at Novartis, this was in 2017. I think at that point of time we started working on RPA and using RPA essentially to start looking at areas which can be easily automated. And I can be honest with you, many pharma companies, including Novartis, have embarked on that journey. Like I said, this evolution is not going to happen overnight. It takes time. There is science behind it. There's technology that's required, and both need to be married. Both are two different things altogether. Now, in certain cases, what I've seen from my experience, the automation has been extremely helpful, especially if, let's say, you look at more of the E2B kind of cases, more of the natural kind of reports that you get. And a lot of companies have seen benefits in the range of 20 to 25% in terms of efficiency. The intent now is how can this efficiency be improved even further? And that's where a lot of aspects related to this, like machine learning and artificial intelligence, are being brought in. Having said that, one thing which I do believe, and this was also a notion which I get asked in many conferences, is with automation, with artificial intelligence, with transformation, will there be job losses? And the answer to that has been no. Because if you look at it, in pharmacovigilance, the volumes have been increasing year on year at the range of 15 to 20% globally. Whereas if you automate, what you essentially do is you are making sure that the same set of people do more high-skilled activities, manage more high-skilled work than the normal skilled or the normal resource activities which can be managed by bots. So since 2017, I have not seen any job losses in the PV industry, and many companies are into automation. They are making sure that things are getting more streamlined. It has actually resulted in more high-skilled jobs. People are taking up much more niche areas, and this is going to continue to be the trend, because as and when you actually end up with more digital activities, you end up actually creating more high-end jobs, and people can then, but people who are ready to scale themselves, who are ready to get onto this bandwagon of digital transformation, are the ones who survive. They have to adopt it. They have to accept that this is the norm, learn it, move with the flow, and these are the people whom you'll see will grow. So like I said, technology process will have an impact on people. It really depends upon people, how they adopt to this and how they really move on. So that would be my say on that.
Very true, Gurpreet, and I completely agree to that. We have to adapt to the new technology and move forward. So I would like to ask everybody to add their points. Cynthia, would you like to go next? What do you think has been your experience with automation and digital transformation in the industry?
Well, I agree with Dr. Gurpreet's comments. In fact, there was a lot of afraid about what is the opinion about the automatization of different process for safety, and what could be the impact for the number of people in the pharmacovigilance unit. And as Dr. Gurpreet mentioned, the real situation is that we are going, or we are in a process in order to make more efficient process and assign to the right people to the right process. So we are working and retaining talent and working in the process that could zoom to the pharmacovigilance or could add value to pharmacovigilance operation. So all these resources that were used or were used in order to, or were replaced for this artificial intelligence, could use for this risk-benefit assessment, were placed to the operation where we could take some decisions about the safety of the product. So in fact, this opportunity to use this digital transformation, in the case of Pfizer, we had a lot of problems because we started to receive a lot of cases, not only for the receptor of the vaccines, also for the health authority. So for us was a crisis, and we received a lot of cases, and we had not the number of resources in order to have the capability to process the case. So Pfizer decided to use this artificial intelligence in order to speed the process and make compliance. So this was very important for us, because this has a lot of impact with regulatory compliance, and all the resources were used in order to support activities for risk management, for aggregation analysis, and this was very useful in this area. Apologize, I started to hear that audible voice. So that's why the situation, no, and it's important to mention, and I agree with Dr. Gurpit, is not the artificial intelligence is not going to replace the human resource. It's going to help us to make more speed and the process and go with these resources in order to help us to have a different process and implement different way to solve and a way to evaluate the safety of a drug. So this is something that we faced, and we had to take decisions in a very short time. So the opportunity that nowadays we had is that with this implementation, we could meet all the regulatory requirements, and we had a lot of challenge, but it was very important to use this artificial intelligence, because if we could not have this artificial intelligence, we could have a lot of delay with the regulatory compliance. And the most important is that the health authority expects from us that we could have an efficient system in order to demonstrate that the vaccine were safe for all the users. So this was very important for us, and that's the Pfizer experience. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. In a pause or a silence, I'll add on some of my comments, and possibly that I started with the difference between that we guys now are making out between drug safety and pharmacovigilance is two words. Drug safety was more reactive and pharmacovigilance is more proactive. We did speak about it, how agile and how our BCPs were so robust that in any sort of disasters, we were on the blink, available to meet all the compliance regulations. With the changing needs with the vaccines, how AI-led pharmacovigilance really helped us to move the data more faster. I'll rather put it as the data mobility was so good that it could be picked up from stage 1 to stage 4 of processing of any ICSRs in a fraction of a second. We did not have to wait for a case to move from one step to the other. So very rightly said that while I was hearing Dr. Tarun Jodh on the aspects of operational excellence, it is operational excellence and process calibrations which has really helped us to generate and create some of those automated bots, automated process, or AI-led tools that is really helping us. We take an example of very widely used and commonly used in most of our service provider environment is how it extracts and codes our adverse event data, and it helps us to give the results in the multiple format, right? It is also helping us to skew the data when we are reviewing the safety signal summary reports, the benefits of risk, the risk benefit management reports that you were talking about, Cynthia, right? Is accepting the technologies now with the increasing demand. So I'll also touch upon a very different topic, which probably would come to pharmacovigilance, is the increased demand of wearable devices, right? The kind of wearable devices that the market has grown right from last 5 years. It is expected to grow twofold, might reach to $320 billion by 2025. Is helping us generating the insights or the health information right from the day when patient enrolls in a clinical trial, and the information reaching back to the central hubs this is also helping us. This is also a kind of an automation or a digital evaluation. And I'll also allow Gurpreet and my colleagues here to add on if they have experience about it, how this is saving the time and the structured data or the information that is coming to the central hubs is helping to evaluate more scientific needs of our final end result, that is giving a better safety and the information to all the users, the practitioners, the healthcare professionals around us, right? For an MAH is more in. I can hear my echo. For an innovator or an MAH organization, it is very imperative to get the final scientific information, and we rely a lot on our partners to create those operational excellence and skew and lean the processes, eliminate the waste and give the best out of it, so that we rely more on the final scientific content and provide the best of the safety to our. I'll take a pause here and hold because I could also hear a lot of echo behind. Over to you, Asha.
I think the internet is acting for everyone. I've had drops. All right, yeah. So, Taranjit, would you like to add to what Dr. Mukesh just
Sure. Yeah. While Dr. Mukesh was describing, I just recall. So I was attending a conference. So while we know that there was a huge impact on clinical trials at the time of COVID. So it's really wonderful how the industry is evolving. Now the medicines are being delivered via drone. Information is being shared on a real-time basis via wearable device. So to me, I think digital transformation, and as Gurpreet has perfectly described, so it is already here. So organizations should believe that they should utilize their current tools and obviously develop new tools to thrive in this changing landscape. Because in our day-to-day lives, while we are working on any tools, so it is always good to see what better we can achieve from those tools, whether it is a simple Excel sheet, whether it is a simple safety database. So sometimes we are not exploring all the opportunities, all the options that these tools are offering, and we are just waiting that maybe we'll develop a new tool which will basically implement or which will implement on the process, and there will be some gain in the efficiency. So to me, I think working on looking out for ways to improve with the help of technology is what digital transformation is. And obviously with the changing landscape, whatever new technology we have, how we can implement and leverage that in achieving our goals. So that is what digital transformation is for me.
Very right, what you just said. And over the years, the variety of safety data sources have grown immensely, allowing pharmacovigilance to develop from a single source passive system into a complex, holistic, dynamical process. And with this change, technology has become a key to a compliant safety and a way to stay behind all the new safety data sources. So a very interesting discussion on this question. And next, I would go back to our question on operational excellence, and I would like to address this to Cynthia. So Cynthia, we would like to know from you how, at the time of the pandemic, with the rollout of vaccines, how the vaccine industry managed operational excellence in this unprecedented time.
Well, as our colleagues mentioned some minutes ago, in order to maintain the operational excellence, were the key, the indicator and key PI measures implementations. So we started to see the need to redefine even the indicators that we had since the very beginning. So one of these important is to check the indicator and to check the operational, the most important process for pharmacovigilance units, and make these redefinitions of what and prioritization of process. Because for us, and as you know, the operation continues for all the drugs, and in addition, we had this additional request from the health authority. And again, with your question, it was very important how the requirements of the health authority started to change, and started to ask for different periods of summary reports in order to define and to demonstrate the safety of the vaccine. So for us, it was very important to this redefinition of process, this redefinition of KPI measures and indicator, and this prioritization of activities. So because we had to work with the support of all the products that we had, and also with these new requirements from the health authority. For example, we started to see requests from the agency about monthly reports, monthly safety reports, and then bi-monthly safety reports. But since the beginning, all the authorities has different requests from us. So was very challenging for all from us to redefine, to make this redefinition of activities, and of course, without these indicators, we could not meet this regulatory compliance, and of course this prioritization, and of course, as I mentioned, the use of these automatization tools and this artificial intelligence was very useful and critical to guarantee this regulatory compliance.
You're on mute.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yep.
Yeah, so I was just saying that very helpful what you shared just now, and with what you shared, it brings me to my next question. That how important, how are the global regulations impacting the PV processes, and how, as you said, there are different regulations for different countries. What are your thoughts about the standardization of the regulations globally, and how can this be achieved? So, Dr. Mukesh, would you like to go for this question and share your thoughts and suggestions?
Sure. Thanks for that question. And this is a very interesting question, probably very debatable. So I'll try to keep it simple and do not make a comment that is going to lead to any sort of wrong debates, right? So we have our regulators who are quite demanding, and they've been regulating and governing most of the activities from the safety perspective of our products that we develop. We know the PV processes are complex. The regulations are not that simple to understand. There are guidances that are provided, but there are no straight instructions given in those guidances. There are guidances which are not calibrated between Europe, or when you go to global versus US, or when you're working at a region. So I can take certain examples, probably one of it when there's a demand with one regulator to have multiple follow-ups, in spite of reporters saying that do not follow up, but they still want you to go back and ask them to follow up. Whereas on the other hand, when you go to East or probably on the West, they'll ask you to make a couple of follow-up requests, and if the reporter is not willing to respond, you can stop there. The challenges that arises are with potentially small biotech pharmaceutical companies which are not headquartered in those countries, right? They really face challenges that which authority to follow and what are the demands. So they need to maintain their databases according to when they are processing and when they are reporting those cases in one region, whereas they have to change those report types or maintain a separate database for another region and report that. So this is quite challenging, and various organizations in support of their service providers are trying to mitigate those challenges. What is really important and probably also happening right now is how regulatories are engaging within themselves, within the public, in the form of collaboration, and how are they partnering to have a better calibrated guidance that is available. If there could be a potential way that informatics could be used to give more guidances to the teams who are processing and submitting those safety informations. And also what is really important here in the form of challenges and everyone needs to understand is the impact on the resources, right? With the different regulations, there's a huge impact on the resources, which potentially leads to a huge cost to MAH, which is percolated further, right? So the cost of a final product is also related to the increased number of resources that are involved in those activities. So at this point of time, there are challenges we all cannot deny upon. There are different ways that everyone is mitigating those challenges. What is very important is to have more of collaboration and partnership within those agencies and the teams that are working upon that information, to have more standardized approaches, which is quite a blue sky, but still a possibility. I'll pass on to my other colleagues to know their views on the changing regulation and the challenges that they feel and face in their day-to-day operational activities.
Every very interesting points shared by you, Dr. Mukesh. And with this, I would like to request everybody present in the meeting to also share their to share their views and thoughts, because everybody is from industry and everybody have their best practices and their experiences. So please feel free to share your questions in the chat box. And if you have any thoughts, and you could raise your hand, and we can expand the discussion to everybody here. All right. Yeah, till that happens. So Dr. Gurpreet, would you like to add a few thoughts on what Dr. Mukesh said? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. We can hear you.
Yeah. So would you like to share a few thoughts on or add on to Dr. Mukesh?
That question is for me, Arshia?
Yes, Gurpreet.
Sorry. So yeah, I think I kind of agree with Mukesh that it's a debatable topic, in terms of evolving regulations and how it is impacting the MAH holder, or even for that matter, the CROs who are working. I also remember a couple of examples, in 2019, when EMA decided to change the regulations to say that, download all the cases yourself from the website, it was challenging. I mean, every MAH had to really relook at the process, define the process, and it actually ended up in them doing much more work, almost 50% more work than what they were doing. Having said that, even now, if you ask me, the social media guidelines are not very clear. So there is a lot of improvement that's required from a regulation perspective. I was talking to somebody the other day, even things like quality and compliance metrics. Every company has their own quality and compliance metrics. We don't have a standard guideline from an FD or an MHRA to say this is how quality and compliance will be measured. So a lot of these things need to evolve. Fully agree with Mukesh that there is a need for the health authorities and regulators to kind of interact with themselves and come up with more common sets of guidelines which applies across the industry. But what's important is, are we changing? The idea is yes. There is evolution. It is improving. It is not probably as agile as I would say the finance industry or some of the other industries. It being a regulated industry, I think the steps are being taken in the right direction. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, there is a consortium of pharmacovigilance companies and health authorities which are meeting regularly to evaluate these regulations and look at the regulations for the future. So a lot of work is happening in that area, but yes, I agree there is more agility required in that. And I think especially if I talk about the Indian context, there's obviously more agility required there as well to kind of have these regulations implemented and also evolved as the industry is progressing.
Thank you, Gurpreet, for your thoughts on that. So we are almost at the end of the session because we've exceeded our time. And I would like to take one last question on what are your thoughts about attracting and retaining good talent, and how your organizations are working towards lowering the attrition rates. So we'll have him down for this little discussion, and then we'll back up. So, Cynthia, would you like to go that question?
Yeah, about the talent, how can we retain good talent? Well, I think that with this opportunity to see different different way of working, this challenge about these fast movements, about regulations, about new applications, about new tools, is very useful in order to retain good talent. However, it's important to start to develop this talent for a better positions, that they could understand what is the value of their activity. Because, for example, it's only they are in case processing, but without understand what is the value of their activity is not, and could not be able to retain this talent, because they are not going to see what is the value of their activity. So I think that this is one of the most important points that we could have to communicate what is the impact of each activity and what is the impact in this change of value of health. So this is my point of view about this retaining, how can we retain talent.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia, for these thoughts that you just shared. And we need to wind up. People need to leave for the day. So I would request you to give your concluding comments on the session. And yeah, thank you.
Thank
Over
you.
to you, Cynthia, again.
Yeah, thank you so much. And this was for me, was very interesting session. And thank you, Asha, and thank you all the colleagues for this opportunity to know and to share your experience. And for me, one of the conclusions and one of the word that I have been hearing during the session is this evolution of the industry, this evolution of process, and that for pharmacovigilance there are three pillars: the operational excellence, the regulatory compliance, and medical excellence. Of course, we have a lot of challenge. We need to optimize routine activities. We need to have flexible activities and optimize these resources. Of course, we have a lot of opportunities, and I could say that one of these great challenges that we have is with the health authority, and this with health authority automatization for operation. No? So we as pharmaceutical company could have these resources in order to make and apply artificial intelligence, but the health authority needs to go with us in the same way and in the same times. No, for example, and this is something that the health authority needs to understand, that they have to go to the next level in order to make more faster decisions and take a new risk. And I think that the health authority in some countries are resistant in order to apply some artificial intelligence or some tools that could be useful for them. And this is something that we need to work in a partnership with the chambers, with associations, with the health authority, and of course the pharmaceutical units and CROs. So we have a lot of opportunities, and the most important is that we had this interaction, this pandemic for us, and this new way of communicate for us could help us to have this kind of congress where we could meet from different countries and share with all the experience. So thank you very much for the invitation. For me, it's a pleasure to be again to be part of this Pharmacovigilance Congress, and thank you so much to all my colleagues. It was an honor to be part of this session, and thank you, Arsha, for your great participation in this session. Thank you so much all. And thank you, Chinmaya, for
Thank you
the
so much.
invitation.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, Cynthia.
so
And
la-
thank
la-
you, everyone, for this.
Thank you so much, everyone. So now I would like to invite Dr. Roja Ramani Madam to conclude this session for today. And we will be having same meeting also. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you, everyone. It was very informative and very new insights and inputs were given by all the new speakers, moderators. The panel discussion was excellent. We had got many new informations regarding the pharmacovigilance, the pharmacovigilance audits, and all the industrial perspectives of the pharmacovigilance also. Thank you, one and all. Let's all meet tomorrow morning again at 10:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Wishing you all a very happy day further. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was really a privilege and honor to have you all in our webinar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the attendees also. Chinmay, can we wind up?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yes.